Okay, folks, we're back up and running. Hopefully that fixed the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so where did we leave off, Derek?
Well, I was just telling the story about the guitar, right?
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Again, this is like my nostalgic piece, and it all started with talking about the beginnings, right? Um, about how you said like how long have you been playing, and you got to say it shows my age, probably about 42 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So you're what, 53?
I'll be 53 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a year older than you.
Yeah. Damn it, man. That feels old to me. I don't know how we got here.
I don't know either. All I know is I get up twice a night to pee.
That starts happening. What's with that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh
It's
man. If I'm really tired, I sleep the night through still, so I'm kind of lucky that way.
yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. Um,
Okay, so
the rock and roll thing to say is if I'd have known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself.
that's right.
But I mean, I can't even really say that because I kind of took care of myself okay.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that way. Yeah.
I remember seeing a video of you on YouTube, or was it Facebook? YouTube or Facebook?
Right.
Doing your own brand of workout. What's that hill across the street from Murdoch?
Well, some people call it Murdoch Hill. That's what most people refer to it now. But when we were young, it was Crocus Hill.
Crocus Hill, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you were wearing a full sweatsuit, gray sweatsuit, and you had this ginormous tire
I used to drag a tire there. Yeah.
tied around your waist, and then full blast run your ass up to the top of the hill carrying this thing.
Yeah.
Or not carrying
I
this thing,
used to do
dragging
that.
this thing behind you.
Yeah.
You still into the hardcore working out?
That is right before I joined the CrossFit movement. I don't know if people are familiar with CrossFit.
I'm not.
You're not?
No.
Well, for those familiar, they'll say, yeah, that's kind of like the ultimate exercise regime. If I had to explain actually, I have a shirt that explains CrossFit in a sentence on the back. It's your balance of strength, agility, cardiovascular, mobility, speed. Like all, you want to be as good at whatever modality you're working. So if you could imagine, like you see these guys, like power lifters. I mean, they lift incredible amounts of weight.
Yeah.
Really, you would think no human should be able to walk up to a bar that weighs, I don't even know what the record is. Like, let's say, I mean, I know human beings have lifted 1,000 pounds
Yeah.
off the ground.
Sure.
I can't fathom that. I mean, you would think this is attached to the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would anyways. So you say, I want to be, if you had a room full of, how could you explain it? I want to be like the strongest guy in a room full of gymnasts. And then in a room full of power lifters, I want to be the most body strong person. I want to be able to do like muscle ups, ring muscle ups, walk on my hands, all that. Like you see a power lifter, they're not going to walk on their hands.
Right.
Right. And then you say, in a room full of Olympic lifters, like it, not only is that like heavyweights, but there's an incredible amount of technique, for example, that'll go into, like snatching weight or power, or cleaning and pressing weight. I want to be, the fastest guy in that group of people. You really want to be so well balanced in every modality of athleticism, but you're never really well, I shouldn't say you're never a pro at one. Like I know one guy who's a lifter. He's an Olympic lifter. He's a great Olympic lifter. And then he's good at all the others. His thing is Olympic lifting. And then he's good at the gymnastic stuff. Like he can do the muscle ups, he can walk on his hands. Actually, he's really good at that too. But you can tell his thing is lifting, Olympic lifting. Of what CrossFit is. It's, work at everything. Strength, mobility, all that. So when I was going to the hill, that was right before I joined the CrossFit gym, and I was one of the older guys there. And the thing about CrossFit is you're trying to keep up with a gym full, like they have a leaderboard. So, for example, here's a workout today. You're going to do 225 pounds 12 times, and then you're going to do like ring muscle ups, 4 of those, and then you're going to do 5 rounds of that. You're going to see how quick you can do it. And then you're going to write if there's like 10 people in the class that day, they're going to write all the 10 names in the order, or not in the order, but what your time was.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a competition every time you go to work out. And I got injured. Like I essentially like blew this shoulder out.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So I kind of still do CrossFit is what I do now. And but it's nowhere near the intensity that I was working out. Because that's the other thing about getting old. You realize like, hey man, I used to be able to like deadlift 500 pounds, and now, I just blew my back out lifting 400. And then it's like a year after that, it's like, man, I can't lift 400 pounds anymore. I can only do 315. It's like when you reach your 40s, your PR, your personal best rep is not going up anymore.
You deadlifted 500 pounds?
That would be my personal best. I deadlifted 500.
Yeah. Wow.
Which, I mean, I guess it sounds impressive, but it's really not when you see what the other guys are doing. They're lifting more than that. I say that I'm strong for a guitar player, but yeah, I mean, you got to realize your limitations too. If I really love like sports and athleticism, I really love it. Like I love watching football or hockey games and seeing these guys who can like, like just the incredible amount of technique these hockey players have, their skating ability, their speed, their how fast they can skate, how hard they can shoot a puck, that kind of stuff. It just blows my mind. And same with so there's a CrossFit Games every year, and basically it's open to anyone in the world. And you can basically you get judged by one of the coaches at a gym who's a certified CrossFit trainer, and then you can enter your score. And the people at the top of the list end up doing this professionally. They go meet usually in California somewhere, and if you like search up CrossFit Games, you'll see these guys competing, just like what I was saying. Like, here's your workout, but it's like not deadlifting 225. That's like 2 of the big plates on each end of the thing. That's why 225 is sort of a standard weight. But their workout would be like it would probably be like run 400 meters, like deadlift like 405, which is 4 plates, and then do like 15 muscle ups, and then walk 50 meters on your hands, and then do that 5 times. And you see like incredibly talented athletes, just unbelievable athletes, like how they can perform this. To me, it's superhuman how they can perform these workouts. And and they do like, that's workout 1 for the day, and there might be one like later that day, and then one the next day, and it's like your body just gets broken.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, I'm not an athlete, I'm a guitar player, but I did wear this shoulder out, and it's from trying to do that kind of workout. That's another story, that shoulder. I kind of had a privilege. I know someone who knows some doctors, and he got me in to see probably the best joint specialist. Well, the best. I'm just going to say, I mean, I don't mean any disrespect to any of the other doctors in this city or in this province, but he's probably the best joint doctor in the city, if not the country. Like, he's phenomenal.
Mm.
And like, again, just being privileged to know someone who knows him really well. He called me in.
Can you shout out his name?
Who got me hooked up?
No, the doctor.
The doctor, Peter McDonald.
Peter McDonald. Okay, well, shout it out to Dr. Peter McDonald.
Yeah, he's really he's an incredible doctor. He had me come in, and he had an MRI up on his screen. He said, I can see some things that I'm sure I can fix. And he told me what they were. And then he said, he didn't say I will know more when I'm in there.
Mm-hmm.
And he did see more. Like, the bicep that attaches to the labrum up here in your shoulder was torn off. He's reattached it to the bone here. So, it was a long recovery. In fact, he was willing to say to me, when would you like to have this done? Which, you know how it is for, I don't want to get into politics or anything like that, but we know how the Canadian medical system right now is bogged down.
Yep.
I mean, people would wait 6 months, a year for a surgery.
Yep.
Like, he said, I remember when I was there, he said, I operate on Tuesdays. Would you like to go tomorrow?
Oh, really?
Said, well, yeah. And I said, well, will I be able to play my gig on Friday? And he said, not a chance,
Yeah.
So he said, this is a long recovery. Like months, right? Like, basically, if you were an athlete, you would be working again. Like, if it was a contact sport, you'd be back in, like, he'd be talking like 4 to 6 months. Like, if this was a mid-season injury, you'd be out for the rest of the season. In fact, the physiotherapist that he then sent me to, like, the next day, said, let's put it into perspective. He said, Adam Lowry has what did he call it? A 3rd degree shoulder separation. He won't be back for another 4 weeks. He said, when they operate on your shoulder, they completely remove it. They fill it with water, completely remove it from the joint, fix what they got to fix, and then relocate it. And so you need a full 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I didn't believe him. I booked a gig. Oh, that would have been so. When he said, would you like to go tomorrow? I said, can I play on Friday? He said, no. And then we talked about the recovery time. And I said, can we wait until after my New Year's gig? And he said, yeah. He said, how's January 2nd? So I had it done January 2nd, 2020. And I had booked a gig at the casino in Winnipeg with Joey Gregorish. All Winnipeggers will know who that is.
Yep.
Most people. So that's like 1 month, basically. Maybe it was like 1 month plus a bit. And I remember the week of the gig, sitting with a guitar right here where I am right now. And I started playing, and I kind of went like, I can do this. Because I told Joey, I'll be sitting on a chair. And Joey said, I don't care if you're laying in a hospital bed. I want you there. So he's such a gracious guy. But I started sitting here going, I can play. This is no problem. And then I went, so if I'm playing, I forget what song it was, but as soon as I went like this, I winced in pain, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to play a gig.
Yeah.
How many times are you playing down here, and then you got to play like a solo thing, and you don't have time to go
make your way up. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go for it. So I phoned him up and I said, Joey, I can't do your gig. And he got a little panicky, but we got Laurie McKenzie to fill in, and obviously it went awesome. I was there at the show to watch it, and unfortunately, I got back to playing about 2 months after, and then the entire world got shut down by the pandemic thing.
COVID, yeah.
So, I mean, I got a couple gigs in, and then I was on hiatus again, which, whatever. Sort of, maybe in a fortunate way, it didn't rush me to get back to work. Those 2 gigs I played sitting down. I didn't put a guitar strap over my shoulder. And, then I said, well, I've got unlimited time now to recover. And then I did start playing in the summer. In the summer, it started feeling normal. I still remember my last physiotherapy gig was virtual here at home. I have a little gym in the back there. And when I got on the it was like a Zoom call or something with him. He said, "Well, I can see you've got equipment." So, we just kept on working the way we were at his facility. And I know that, yeah, my last physio thing was virtual, and it was here at the house. Um, so, mixed blessing, I guess. Like, I'm not going to say good, but our government said anyone who was independent worker, like self-employed, gets $2,000 a month. So I just said, well, I'll take the $2,000 a month.
Well, sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's my nature to want to work hard. So after a few months, I said, I want to find something to do. So I went and got an essential job. Like, I started working. It's really the first, I don't know what, like, you would call it, job that I had. Like, I can't remember when, like, I know, like, I worked in a restaurant when I was a kid, and I worked in a factory when I was an older teenager. But, I started working at John
Wilmar
Gunn Middle School.
Windows.
Yes, yes.
We both worked there.
Did you work there?
Of course I did.
Why don't I remember that?
Broken.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob. What you done buy from the lady? Too cheap?
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The lunch lady. I do remember you working there. And I remember Brian Hart worked there too.
Yeah, Jason Hancock's.
Did he work there?
Briefly.
Yeah, I don't remember that. But yeah, that's funny, man. Why you don't buy from the lady?
Too cheap? Yes. Cheap. Too cheap?
Oh man, that's funny stuff, man. Yeah, so I mean, I had that job. But so I guess, just feeling like I've got to do something productive. Like, I've got to contribute. Well, I mean, I was contributing to the household just by getting $2,000 a month for doing nothing. But I wasn't being very productive musically. I was trying to write. It wasn't really working. There was no gigs. And I mean, primarily I made my living as a
male escort.
Musician. What's that?
Male escort.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they weren't allowing us to cohort, so that was over. Had to wear a mask. So I started working. I started working as like a youth care worker at John W. Gunn Middle School, which was an awesome experience, really. It was really like. And now I can be a full-time musician, and I got back in touch with the school, and I even this year I picked up 100 hours, which doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not. I go to the school like once or twice a week for like 3 or 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have some relationship with some kids. There's a lot of parity in our area, which I know that we live in the same area, where you have a kid sitting at this desk who their parents, own the house that is whatever, $500,000 or $600,000. And then you got another kid sitting right beside him who's a foster kid, living with like 3 other foster kids in a 3-bedroom bungalow on the other side of the, on the old section of town.
Mm-hmm.
So there's kids who show up to school every day who haven't eaten breakfast, haven't had a shower, all that stuff.
It's terrible.
And, it's an eye opener, so it's just, if I made some good connections with some kids, and it was either through music or even sometimes through anything. I would just try to find something in common with them. They have there at that school, they have a weight room. We'd go to the weight room, and sometimes it's just like it's a pretty shitty time, I think, for kids. Like, I think this time in particular is a shitty time to be a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I think we had a lot of fun, music was a big part of it.
Yeah.
I just don't see that existing now the way it did then. Like, it's not a part of the culture. There isn't, whatever band is coming to the arena, and everyone we know is going, right? Like, Iron Maiden's coming, and we're all buying tickets, and we're all going, and it's all we're going to talk about until it happens, and then we're going to talk about it for the whole month after. You know?
Oh, did you hear Kiss is coming again
Yes, they are. Yeah,
for
yeah.
their farewell tour?
Another retirement tour.
Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
yeah. I've seen them a few times, and I gotta say, like, I love the songs.
Yeah.
I know the band is, you know, you can say what you want about the band, but I do love some of those songs still to this day, and I still love the show,
Well,
the
it's
spectacle.
spectacle.
Yeah, the spectacle that they put on, kind of like a Maiden show, different because it was all really like, like mystique. It was, who is that guy with the playing the bass with the boots with heels that big and blood coming out of the mouth and spitting fire, and then Ace Frehley with the Les Paul with 3 pickups shooting fire out the headstock and stuff,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas Maiden is like, more of a, well, sometimes it's like a history lesson. It's like, why is there a World War II fighter plane in the arena? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which was the last show I saw Maiden do. They actually had, during Aces High, they had like, I don't even know the name of the plane. Bruce Dickinson would be disgusted with me. The plane flying, in the arena.
Yeah.
With the propeller going and stuff, like how awesome is that? You know what I mean? All of it, man. A Priest show,
Still, the loudest concert I've ever been to was the Turbo Lover tour.
Yeah, we talked about that. That was a loud one.
Rob Halford, in between songs, when he'd be talking to the crowd, all I heard was squelch.
Oh, yeah?
And I was like sixth row on the floor.
Yeah.
I couldn't make out what the fuck he was saying.
Yeah, I used to be able to imitate because, they had their sort of almost scripted thing that they're going to say between songs.
Yeah.
But his whole, especially at that time, mid 80s, the whole thing was, how high are you? How high can you sing?
Yeah.
Plus you had a good range, right?
Yeah.
But it's not just how big is your range, it's how high can you sing?
Yeah.
And he always, hit those high. I'm not going to try that, but he'd hit those high notes. And yeah, sometimes he would talk, it's, I'll reshare my idea of the loudest show that I recall. And you said that you also remember AC/DC being ridiculously loud.
Oh, yes, definitely.
The Who Made Who tour, when it came to Winnipeg, I'm going to say it was maybe 87, 88, somewhere around there.
Yep.
When they did in the old Winnipeg Arena, which was hard to make sound good.
Yep.
Doesn't matter who your sound tech was, it was hard to make that room sound good.
Yep.
Anything that sounded good in that arena had a magician for a sound tech, I think.
Yeah.
But AC/DC, I won't say the year for sure. 87, maybe something like that. Queensryche opening. My first time seeing Queensryche.
They are awesome live.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. Jeff Tate. Jeff Tate is just fucking incredible.
Yeah, yeah. And again, we talk about range and how high you sing. Like, he's got it all. And then what a pitch. And
well, he's trained. His mother is an opera singer, I believe.
Probably.
Does that ring a bell?
I don't know. I don't know the history of him.
And I think I read back in the days of the old Hit Parader magazine.
Yeah.
Something about him having a 5-octave range.
I mean, that would be huge. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but that would be huge.
Massive, yeah.
I know I can sing from here to here, from here to here, and maybe a little past that, maybe a little below this. So I've got less than 3 for sure.
Yeah.
And this is low. I'm a baritone. Well, maybe not a baritone, but like I can sing that note. I can sing that note. That's 2 octaves. I would say I've got a 2-octave range. So 5 would be, sort of inconceivable for me. But he can probably sing lower than this. And I know he can sing a hell of a lot higher than this. He can probably sing this.
Mm-hmm.
which I know he can.
Oh,
That's what blows my mind.
Did you
with
get
that.
did you get that song I sent you?
I did, but you know what? I gotta say, I haven't listened to it yet.
You don't. Well, that's okay. It's Merle Haggard.
Right?
You told me that you loved country,
I love country. Yeah.
and the person that you referenced was Waylon Jennings.
Yeah.
You haven't heard anything until you've heard Merle.
I mean, I've heard Merle. I'm not sure of the one you sent me, though. I'll give it a listen.
There's actually a better version of that song that I'm going to send you. It's they put out a CD as a tribute to Merle.
Right.
It's called Working Man Blues.
Yeah, yeah.
And the guitar work in that song, it's like 5 minutes and 7 seconds long.
Right.
And most of it is guitar.
Yeah.
And it's typical Nashville style picking.
The players down there are ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. You know, I play in Doc Walker for the last, say, couple of years.
Yeah.
And of course, they go down there. They used to go down there to write. I know Murray Pulver moved down there for a while. And I mean, I just hear the stories about the musicianship is still like competitive. It's like, you know, who's the best player? Who are we getting to play on this record? You know, and you know, there's many of them, and they're all ridiculously good.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Chris Thorstenson says, like, he goes, you'll walk into any given club, and there's this like, he says, there's this fat, pimply young guy who's never had a girlfriend sitting there playing pedal steel, and it's like mind blowing good. And he does. I can't do it the way he does it. He's playing his, and he looks up to see who's looking like this. And I could just picture it, you know.
Yeah.
These guys who just dedicate every second of their life to perfecting what they do, and you know, a pedal steel player or a fiddler or whatever, you know, these guys that, you know, they'll probably they'll play on every Nashville record, you know, that comes out. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, there's just crazy talent, and I do see it a lot in the country genre. Like, you'll see crazy good guitar players. I mean, with rock and roll, I think we saw the pinnacle of that in the 80s.
Yes.
Like, we saw the pinnacle of rock guitar players, for example. And back then it was like the LA players, you know.
Yeah.
And there still is great session players. Like, I think what comes to mind quickly would be Tim Pierce. Like, he's just a great player. And if you go on YouTube and just look up Tim Pierce, you're going to see like a guy who will, like, any rock, put him in any rock situation and just say, okay, here's the solo section. And he'll just first time off play, like, what key are we playing in? Here's the key, here's the chord changes. And he'll just first time play it, and you'll go, like, I could have worked, for me, I could have worked on that all day and I wouldn't have come up with something that good. Like, that's just brilliant, you know?
Tim Pierce.
Tim Pierce, yeah.
Tim Pierce. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, and a good guy too.
Well, you know him.
Session players like that. I've never met him, no, but I've seen him. I know people who have met him, and you know, confirm he's a good dude. And I know some other guys who, like, there's a Canadian guy who went to LA. His for those who don't know, his name's Phil X. When I lived in Toronto, I used to run into him a fair bit, and he moved to LA. And he ended up, like, playing on a lot of session stuff. He ended up just, you know, like, oh, I think he's on a Rob Zombie record, and just lots of different records. And more recently, I guess, I don't know how many years it's been now, but he's been playing in Bon Jovi.
Oh, really?
No more Richie Sambora and Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
Or I'd say, I don't know, maybe the last, I haven't kept track. Not maybe quite 10. I don't know. But for sure 5 at least. He's been playing in Bon Jovi. And he's a hell of a singer too.
So what happened to Sambora?
I hear I don't want to say anything unconfirmed. Maybe some problems with substance.
Oh man.
You can't maintain that.
Yeah.
When you said before in the pre-interview thing, like, we'll talk about all the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I said, well, you might be disappointed with me because, I mean, it's been a cautionary tale to me. Like, I've never been into it, but I've been around it,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, anyone, when you're young, it's like, well, we're invincible. You can't keep doing it. I think even Keith Richards basically doesn't do anything more than smoke cigarettes at this point in his life. Because you either quit or die, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I know both. Guys who have either quit or died. I know both. In fact, the bass player in Harlequin that I started playing with uh, over 20 years ago, he we just had the anniversary of his death, 2014. 2014. Now it's 2022, so 23. Holy shit! So 9 years, or was it 8 years? Anyways, yeah, he passed away. And when I look back, he's not a heck of a lot older than I am now.
Mm.
We had to replace him a few years before that, right? So I think he was 56 or 57 when he passed away.
Oh man, young.
And it was substances, right? Yeah, that's too young, right? And it's just addiction. It gets away from you. You think you're having a party until it's like, well, no one else is drinking right now, or no, it's like you're doing this at 10 in the morning by yourself. It's like the party was over, 8 hours ago.
Yeah.
So, that was my understanding, was that Sambora had a substance problem. And the problem with, I mean, the dangerous thing, I think, is, well, I'll get better. Like, I'll go into treatment and I'll get better. And the dangerous thing is you leave treatment, and I mean, addiction it's not as treatable as some people think. Like, some people think, well, I'll just go into rehab and I'll come out. I won't, I won't have cravings. You'll always be thinking about it, or you'll always have that craving, or you'll see other people doing it and go like, you know what? He only had 3 drinks. I'll just have 3 drinks. And it's like, yeah, but like 12 drinks ago, you said you were only going to have 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I have a feeling, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to talk to people who know. Like, I don't really talk to Phil anymore. I think I've talked to him like maybe twice since I've left Toronto. I just got this feeling like, it's also difficult to deal with people when they have those addictive tendencies, right? Like,
oh, of course.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Phil's such a nice guy. He's so complimentary. He's so nice. He's such a good player. Not that Sambora wasn't a great player. He's a great player. But Phil is such a good player. And then he sings ridiculously good. I know Richie could sing really well too, but like, Phil's also a lead singer. He's lead singer, lead guitar player of the Drills. If you ever look that up on YouTube. Again, like, people might not know who Phil X is or who the Drills are, but if you look up those 2 things on YouTube, you're going to go like, holy shit, this is ridiculous. Yeah, those are 2 things to look up if you haven't checked that out. That was sort of, like I say, I think we saw the pinnacle of that in the 80s. And I think we're lucky to have experienced that. I think back then it was like, if you had the right mix of musicianship and songwriting, I think you could just be iconic. That's it. Write good songs and have great musicians, and you're well, I mean, always write good songs. But I think back in the 80s, you can do the smoke and mirrors thing. It's like, we kind of have one good song and killer players. And we can kind of get away with some stuff because we can put on a spectacle with our killer players.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there still are some, if I had to think of bands that were just really based on musicianship, like I couldn't name a song really. I mean, I can think of like some songs, um, like maybe one song that I can think of the name, but like Cacophony would be a band
Mm.
where it's like I don't really know the songs, but you see the guys playing, you go like, well, I'll just listen to this because there's like a technical circus going on here between the players, you know. And it's engaging for me as a musician. I don't know if it's engaging to anybody else. You're not going to be humming that song at the end of the night. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, those uh, that era of music where it's like, you know, just hone your skill, be the best player. And I mean, locally there were some great players. I mean, my biggest influence was a guy, Winnipeggers would know Barry Player. Like he's like a technical genius, you know. Um, and there have always been players from Winnipeg. Lenny Bro
Oh yeah.
is like still to this day legendary, internationally, worldwide. Like Chet Atkins revered him as the best guitar player that ever lived.
Is that
And
right?
oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, Chet Atkins is no slouch, right?
Yeah.
And then I mean, like he's ridiculously good. And then he says, but the best in the world would be Lenny Bro. And I mean, I think he died in 1980. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to see him. I have listened to recordings, and there's still sometimes I'm hearing things on his recordings where I can't see what he's doing. I can hear the recordings. It's like I don't know what he's doing, but you know, it's a mind blower. Like, yeah, he's ridiculously good, and yeah.
Who may not be such an easy question to answer, but who would you say is your biggest influence?
That is a tough one to answer because you know, as you start learning guitar, you know, it's sort of the probably like the earliest um, things that made me want to pick the thing up and play. I would say are my biggest influences, and I would have to go back to Van Halen.
Okay.
Yeah, I still remember the first time hearing Van Halen. I'll never forget it. Um, I can, you know, I can relive it in my mind as we talk about it. In Manitoba, you drive east, and you within a short period of time, like an hour and a half or 2 hours, you were already on the Canadian Shield and seeing some of the most beautiful landscape in the world. And I was at Caddy Lake. I was swimming out in the lake, and from the dock. Well, hang on a second. I'm gonna put this away. I'm gonna pick up my Les Paul, which isn't something that I mean Eddie would have played his. He always played like a Strat style guitar,
Yeah.
and of course he sort of coined the or didn't, you know, he sort of not invent. Well, I mean he was definitely yeah, you could say invent, but you know, from across the lake, hearing the you know.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff, right? Right. Then all of a sudden, right into hearing that from like, you know, I'm 40 feet out in the water and hearing that stuff. I was just like, holy shit, what is that?
Yeah.
Right. And you know, that I guess that's 1980. When did the first Van Halen come out? Like that's embarrassing right there, 1978.
Yeah.
But I was probably listening to it like in 79 or something like that. And just being like, what the hell is that?
Did you know? I saw an interview with Eddie on YouTube, and he was asked something about his unique sound, and the question came up about distortion.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to the interview guy, he says, I hand to God, I have never owned a distortion pedal.
Well, what I know, like he used Marshall Plexis, and I know that I've used some Marshall Plexis. I know that when you crank them up, like basically you take every knob and crank them all up, it's got a lot of gain. It's got a lot of distortion. I know he's done that. And
Mhm.
I mean, the thing about that is it's just too loud. And I think, back then you would get what's called attenuators, where they would basically suck some of the, I don't know. I'm not an electrician guy. I had one that I used for a 100-watt Marshall JCM 800. And I mean, I've heard that they're sort of like dangerous. I don't know if it's like an electrocution thing, or if they would like combust or what. But he would, he would. I don't know if he used the attenuators or not. But you crank those plexis up, and they break up beautifully. And then I know like his sound morphed a lot around the time that Dave left. We all know that it sounded different. And he started using amps with like preamp stages in them. So it's in essence, it's not a distortion pedal, but it's I mean, it's the same kind of gain. In fact, it's a nicer gain structure than a distortion pedal, because it's done with preamp tubes.
Yep.
Yeah. So when you use a distortion pedal, I have one pedal that's got tubes in it, and I just not crazy about it. My other distortion pedals, it's all done with like diodes, right?
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of breakup. And I mean, my favorite ones, they're all trying to emulate that. Like it sounds kind of like it, right? But I'm not loud. Like you can hear it. I can talk over top of that. If you got a Marshall Plexi to break up like that, you wouldn't be able to talk outside the house. You know what I mean? They are loud.
Yeah.
So I mean, I believe him when he says I didn't use a distortion pedal, because it was ridiculously loud.
Yeah.
You can break those amps up. You can mod them too, and I know he did a lot of modifications.
Yes.
Here.
Yes.
Guitars and amplifiers.
Yep.
That's where he was really like inventive. Like he didn't invent this. Sorry, my sleeves are too long. He didn't invent tapping. But a lot of people say, oh, he invented that. He popularized it, right? And he like his tone was the best tone ever. Like,
well, who invented the tapping?
Yeah, the tapping thing.
Who invented it?
Who invented it? I don't know, but you can see stuff. Like I think you can see old videos from like the 50s and 60s of Les Paul doing stuff with the right hand on the fretboard.
Yeah.
I just, he did it different than other people. I know that for sure. He also did stuff kind of atonally, like when he did stuff like, when he did that, it'd be like, that's not really in any key. That's just notes. It's just a whole bunch of notes, but it sounds great going in. Right? That's just like, that doesn't make sense, but musically, you're going to say that's not in F sharp minor. The rest of the song is in F sharp minor, but it just sounds awesome. It's just, it was a fast flurry of notes, right? And I can't really do that. I can't really say like, I'm just going to play any of the 12 notes and make it make sense. Unless I make a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. But man, he was, I mean, he's my first, I think probably my earliest influence, and probably the reason I wanted to play this thing. Was hearing Eddie Van Halen play guitar.
I'll never forget. I think you guys, if I remember correctly, I think you guys played Murdoch for, well, it wasn't really a dance because it's kind of hard to dance to Green Manalishi.
Yes, yeah. We used to play Priest and Maiden and Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and shit like that.
Yeah, you guys put on a show, and
I wanted to be a rock and roll star.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like, at that time, I didn't want to be ABBA. I wanted to be Van Halen.
Yeah.
Which, funny enough, you would like David Lee Roth would say, I want to see girls dancing to this song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They weren't a metal band. They really weren't. They were a rock and roll band.
Yeah. But the point I was getting to is I'll never forget there was There was Battle of the Bands at Murdoch. I think there was only like 3 bands or 2 bands that were in it. You guys were one of them. And then I remember you coming up to me and asking to borrow a cigarette.
Really?
Yes. You don't know why?
I didn't smoke.
No, you didn't smoke. But Eddie Van Halen smoked.
In the headstock.
You put it in the headstock.
headstock.
So I'm in the wings, and you're telling me about this before you go on live.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, when I give you the nod, pull out a smoke, light it up, and I'll come and get it from you.
Were we in the school?
Yeah, in the gym.
It's funny, eh?
Yeah, I remembered that.
We weren't allowed to smoke in the school, though, were we?
No. Well, if there was a school dance, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I remember before we got to Murdoch, I remember it was like, oh, they let you smoke in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems ridiculous to me now.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you could, let the kids smoke in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
It seems ridiculous. Oh, man. Yeah, no, I know. I idolized Eddie so much that it's like, oh, man, it'd be nice to have that cigarette sticking out of here. And again, unfortunately, that and alcohol are what killed Eddie.
Although he didn't say so.
I know.
When he developed the cancer, he said it was because he was holding metal picks in his mouth.
Yeah.
And it was that led to the esophageal cancer.
That's what he says.
That's what he says. Well, I mean, it's bullshit. You know that, right?
Well, I mean, I have metal picks, right? And I do store picks like this. Like a lot of times, if I got to put my guitar down, I'll just do this, right?
Yeah.
I can't see you getting cancer from, doing this. Here's a metal one. I'm not really paranoid about doing this.
Of course not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, maybe he doesn't want to take the accountability. I mean, it's mortality. It's tough to come to terms with. And to say like, man, I mean, you got to live your life, I think. And hopefully, you do it without regrets, right? If the end comes too soon, it like you could say, well, I probably shouldn't have drank and smoked as much as I did.
Mm-hmm.
How old was Ed when he died? 60? Do you know?
I don't remember.
In his 60s, I know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still far too young anyway.
It's too young, and it really did shake me the day that he died. I remember hearing about it. I all of a sudden my phone blew up, and people were saying Eddie died, and I'm like, I took pause for a moment. I really thought of that time I was out on the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was a tough one.
For me, it was SRV.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I was a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. Me and Bernusky, we used to get together at his place and jam on the weekends. And I don't even know if you've ever heard Scott play.
Absolutely. I mean, we grew up at the same time with the same people, and I remember going over to Scott Bernusky's place, and I remember he had a delay pedal.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard that. I'd never heard this before.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you guys turn it up.
Yep.
Right? Oh, that's nice, And I remember playing with that delay pedal, and it's like, it's like, I need that. That's awesome.
He was a hell of a player.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah.
He was incredible.
I can't remember. I lost touch with him.
Me too.
What happened to him?
Me too, yeah.
Did he ever play guitar after that? I don't know.
He switched to bass.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, man. SRV was just he was another one that was like just he really opened me up to the blues, like made me want to be a blues player.
Yeah.
Um, I never had the tone like he had. Like I could never get that. I was more of a double coil, rock guy, but I really love that. Like that's his single. Like I know that all I'm doing is using both pickups, but he had that single coil, fat, Strat, bite, yeah, his tone was incredible.
That beaten up Strat that he used, the brown with the
The
sunburst in it or
sunburst, yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Holes in it. The paint was scratched. Pieces of wood missing from the body.
oh yeah,
You know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tell that he probably had that guitar everywhere he went, and it looked like he paddled a canoe with that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was, yeah, he had great tone.
And what a
It's funny,
tragedy because he had just gotten clean and sober for I think it was a year or year and a half.
yeah, yeah. That's the tragedy behind that one. I think is, I mean, again, it happens to a lot of musicians, and I think it's partly the personality type that it takes to be so dedicated to one thing. Maybe it's like I don't know what it is, but and then you get successful at that, and people just they in the rock and roll thing especially, it's expected. It's like you show up at your gig and there's bottles for you. Here's as much beer as you can drink, a couple bottles of wine, and as much booze as you can drink. And not only is it sort of like it's probably the only line of work where it's not just allowable, it's encouraged. And you work tooth and nail to be a rock star, and now you're it. And it's like, well, I gotta do this right. And the unfortunate thing, like you say, is he was an addict who was able to break that chain of addiction for a long enough period. Like I say, it's pretty highly resistant to treatment, and it is subject to relapse. But he had been gone like something like a year and a half or 2 years, completely sober,
Mm-hmm.
and like playing as good as ever, sounding great, singing great. I remember some of his last shows like that I saw. I think it might have been a um oh, I can't remember what show it was. Uh Either way,
You're not
I saw
thinking live at the El Magumbo, are you?
I don't think it was a Macombo one.
No.
But I just remember saying,
I
man, he's
actually
playing.
found that on DVD.
Is that right?
Yeah. I thought that was going to be impossible to find because I saw it aired on Much Music. And I remember seeing it in HMV on VHS,
Right.
which at that time DVDs were just starting to come out. So I figured, nah, there's no way they're going to release it. So I was noodling around on Amazon and I just typed in SRV DVD. Boom. Live at the Alma Gumbo. I didn't even look at the price. I just put it in my cart and checked out, and I've got it. Made a backup of it immediately. The original stays in the case. If I want to listen to it, I
Right.
play the backup.
Yeah. 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 Um, yeah. That's just, that's the tragedy behind that story. Is a great player who sort of got it together, and you think, like a guy, he could have been like an Eric Clapton, went through all the phases, do the only blues stuff, do the pop stuff, do all that stuff.
Well, Clapton was
Playing,
supposed to be on that chopper.
right? Yeah.
You remember that?
There's always stories like that too, well, all the way back to the Richie Valens story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tragedy behind that, and who was supposed to be there. Same with the Randy Rhoads thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, crazy stories. These guys we lost, you know.
So,
But the thing about Van Halen that really sort of astounded me, and it's probably the same like for you and SRV, is these guys like I don't know Eddie Van Halen. I never met him. I know some people who know him. But like, how is it that you can like really sort of be shaken when you don't even know the guy? Like when I remember the day that he died, and it was like it really bothered me deeply.
mhm.
I actually got a gig that night, and I went and did a gig, and it's like I'm having a hard time getting through this gig tonight. Just I don't feel composed enough to play.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's funny how you can have that attachment to someone that you don't even know, and it's all through their music, right?
yeah.
Yeah, like Eddie's music touched me that way. Yeah,
Um, we've
that's
been
why I
at
say
this.
when you say who's your biggest influence or who's your first influence, that would be me, Eddie.
Who's
What were you gonna
second?
say?
Who's
Who's
second?
second? Then there'd probably be a whole bunch of seconds. You
Your
know,
top second.
I don't even know if I could pick a top second. Honestly, then I'd start going, well, I still remember the first time hearing, like, I got heavy into the that '80s instrumental rock thing. For a while, you could actually turn on a radio station, hear instrumental rock and roll, like Steve Vai or Joe Satriani or Eric Johnson.
Yeah.
Those guys were influential. You know, um, I guess I don't know. I don't know who I would have to pick as a second influence. I would say there's like Eddie would just I just got to say Eddie. And then there's sort of like Jimi Hendrix. I remember,
Okay.
as I was learning music, Jimi Hendrix. It's like um, just the raw emotion and I know he had limitations. Playing a guitar. He always played a Stratocaster, and we can see a Strat. I'll grab the closest one.
That's my favorite
It's
guitar.
it's meant to be this way,
But
and
he's
of course
playing it left-handed. Yeah.
he's playing it this way, and I mean you can't reach all the frets, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, and not just that, there were limitations of the time. He would use the whammy bar a lot, and he would play it out of tune and just play it while it's out of tune and play it in tune. He would just make it in tune as he played it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was brutally out of tune. You could hear his music live and you'd be going, well, that's just out of tune. But he just still was able to emote through that guitar. Just almost like, man, he's wrestling an alligator and he's winning. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain how I felt about Jimi Hendrix, but that would be another big influence, you know, because I can't emulate that. I can't really play like Eddie. I can't really play like Jimmy. Um, you know, and as I feel like as I move along uh, my musical career, I really don't want to emulate anybody anymore. I really want to try to continue to be my own voice or find the way I play.
Well, you're
Um,
you're looking to create your own sound.
yeah, and I'll never be that. I know that I'll never be. Like Jimi Hendrix was a monumental generational guitar player. Eddie Van Halen was the same thing. But I'm enjoying doing what I do, and I feel I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I get to do it.
Well,
I
that's.
grew up with.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I grew up with a lot of guys, as we both did. At a time when it was a really like cool, popular thing to be into music, playing music, pick your instrument and play it. And I mean, I'm lucky that I'm still doing it.
Hmm.
Because I know a lot of guys said like, okay, I get it. It was fun and I'm going to keep doing it, but not as a living. I'm not going to try to pursue that. And for better or for worse, I did. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but here we are like many years later and I'm still working at trying to be a musician.
Well, that's a good segue. That can lead us into what you are known for right now, which is Harlequin.
Yeah. Um, I think, still when I run into people, if they have heard of me before, if they know me, they're like, hey, you're the guy from Harlequin. Like even as like good example would be this weekend. I just did a pickup gig. Like right now, Harlequin is very seasonal to the point where the lead singer, George Boulanger, he goes away right after Christmas, and he basically comes back in the spring when it's warm. Usually, I talked to him last week. He hasn't mentioned coming back yet. He's down there right now, but we're into March now, so
He's down where?
in Mexico.
Mexico. Okay.
Yeah, he's got a place down there, and I think he buys a one-way ticket down. He gets a phone down there. He sets himself up to book gigs and do some of that kind of work, but doesn't do much. I think he enjoys his life down there. And then he comes back in the late spring as soon as gigs start coming in, and we'll rehearse, and then we'll go out and work for the summer kind of thing. And it'll go into the fall. And then, we'll do this sort of wrap up thing. We'll have a little Christmas party, and see you later, guys. And he's gone again, right? That's the way it's been going for him for the last few years. But like this last weekend, I did a pickup gig at the, I played at the Royal George, which is a monumental place for Transcona people.
Half a block away from me.
Is that right? That's how close you live?
Yep.
And then I played on Saturday at South Beach Casino.
Oh yeah.
Which is, we know that's like, an hour drive north of Winnipeg.
Yep.
And when I got there were some people who, oh my God, I can't believe you're the guy from Harlequin. It's like, yeah, I'm the guy from Harlequin, I guess, So it still sort of happens. It's like, it's like, how come you're here? It's like, well, I'm working, I'm still playing music, and I'm, just picked up this gig for the weekend. It's obviously I'm not an original member of Harlequin. The original guitar player is Glenn Willows, who's a dear friend and a super talented musician, songwriter, a great guy, and I still talk to him all the time. I guess, the way it would have started out would be like, well, we're going to go back to maybe around the year 2000. I guess just prior to that, I lived in Toronto, and I moved back to Winnipeg. And to get back in the music scene, I made a little CD, sort of a demo as a calling card, and I handed it out to everyone that I could. And he actually contacted. Well, we got in contact. I don't know if he called me or I called him. And hey man, do you want to fill in for him for a Ron Paley gig? And of course, yeah, I'd love to do that. So I did that. And hey, I'm putting, like, he got into artist management. He was managing artists, and I mean, he helped sort of develop some pretty big artists that came out of Winnipeg after Harlequin's sort of era. Like people would know, like McMaster and James, stuff like that. There was, that's the thing with Winnipeg is there's been stuff coming out of Winnipeg for years. I mean, if you look outside of Winnipeg, people say, "Oh yeah, right, the Guess Who."
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more than the Guess Who. We can talk about that, but he was managing a couple things that I was involved in, and then even he would use me like, "Hey, I've got this artist." Usually like a solo thing, a girl who plays piano and sings. She's got a showcase. Would you play with her? Yeah, I'll play with her. He wasn't my manager, but he was really helping me further, get involved in other projects. And, around, I guess, 2000, he said, "Hey, would you ever play in Harlequin if I asked you to play a Harlequin gig?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to play in Harlequin." And he said, "Well, do you think you'd be able to play a gig on Friday?" And this was like on a Tuesday, So, being a kid who grew up in the 80s, I said, "Well, I could probably play the gig tonight if I had to. If you give me the next 8 hours to learn the rest of the songs that I don't know how to play and show up and play, I could probably pull it off tonight. So, yeah, I'll take the gig." And, it ended up being a string of gigs and I remember my first gig was out in Saskatoon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it goes back that far, and you know, I'll never be the original guy. You know, he again, like Glenn wrote those. Uh, he partner wrote a lot of the stuff on those first 4 albums or 5 albums, and it's some great stuff. It's monumental stuff. It's the soundtrack for a lot of guys our age.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, even more recently, I talked to George obviously frequently, and we're still working together. And he said to me recently, you know, you're not an original guy, but I've played with you longer than anybody else. Um, and it really hit me like, wow, man, I've been playing with George for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know if it'll, you know, and even Gary Golden, he's back in the band. The original keyboard player is back in the band. When I joined the band, it was a guy, MJ Hutton, who's a really good piano player, really good musician. Um, and then for a spell, it was Darren Moore. And then when he went on to do different stuff, Gary Golden, when he left Harlequin, he got into just the financial business. He's a smart guy. He's like, you know, a quirky guy, but he's probably got like a bit of a tinge of genius. I don't know, but he got into like, you know, I don't know, investments, and he was working in credit unions and stuff like that. And then when it came to retirement time for him, even as it drew near, I don't think he was fully retired yet. Him and George sort of reconvened and said, why don't you start playing in the band again? So it was a lot of fun to see Gary Golden, the original keyboard player, come back into the band.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a great musician. And he would say, they call me Junior in the band, like George and Gary, they call me Junior. And
Being the youngest.
With being the youngest, yeah, and I
Yeah.
still am the youngest in the band. We obviously, when Nick passed away, we replaced him before he passed away, because the unfortunate things about addictions is you go from what you guys call a functional addict to eventually a non-functional addict. So we had to like it, man. It kills me. You know, I know, like I was there. I went through it with him, really. You know, and you know, George had to sit down with him and like he said, you know, this is getting out of control. You know, like you're not able to play. It's, you know, you're hitting the rider. You're the first guy to hit the rider, and what doesn't get finished, you take back to the hotel room. What you don't finish that night, you start drinking the next day.
Mm-hmm.
This is, you know, and you know, Nick would just say, "Oh, I got it under control. It's no problem. Last time it was a crazy party, you know," and it'd be like, I just remember I wasn't there at. George took Nick out for sushi when he wanted to talk this over with him, and George told me Nick called it the Last Supper. um, he said, "No, Nick, we gotta replace you. We gotta move. We gotta make a move." And he was saying, "Don't do this, George. Don't do this." And sort of the guilt that comes in is like it really went downhill for Nick when after. Like, I mean, it wasn't good when we replaced him, but it seemed like it went downhill a lot faster after we replaced him.
Oh.
And I think it was like that was a big part of Nick was music. And it's like he had to try to hold together enough to do this show, and you know, but he wasn't really making that anymore, right? So you know, we had to replace him, and you know, we replaced him for a while with Paul McNair, who a lot of people would know, and they'd know him now as the singer for Streetheart.
Yeah.
I've
spoken to him.
Yeah, post Kenny Shields. Kenny Shields passed away, and the band took maybe a year to assess what the steps to take are, whether they should let the band, you know, sort of the legacy goes along with Kenny's passing, and they didn't. They decided to keep going, and whatever people decide, I think, is okay. But regardless, then I feel like we're fortunate. We got Chris Gaffney in the band playing bass. And I mean, that would be a name, again, that a lot of Winnipeggers would know. Again, got involved in artist management. Like people might know him as Orphan, The Pumps. I guess later after that, there was a band called the Deadbeat Honeymooners that had one record.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and now he's still doing Orphan and the Pumps. And he also got into artist management, and he does a lot of recording. He does a lot of studio stuff, a lot of co-writing with people. I mean, we're lucky that he said yes. And I know he didn't say yes right away. He didn't jump at it. And I went over to his place a couple times and tried to grease him up a bit and talk him into coming in the band, just try it out. And I'm glad that he did. I think he enjoys it. So that all came from why they call me Junior. I'm still the youngest guy in the band.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't get some young ringer to come and play bass, which is sort of always a fallback. It's like, oh, here's, this guy's such a good bass player, and he's available, and he's a young guy, and he'd be willing to do it, and he'd probably say jump at it and say yes. But I'm glad we got Bert Gaffney in the band. Like he's also has a bit of a music legacy that we get to. He shares with us. Like we play. Again, for Winnipeggers, they would know Success, right?
Yeah.
There's that one, and of course, Miracle, right? Oh, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
Like, what a great song that is.
Yeah, it is.
So we get to play those songs, and not just cover them. Chris is there, and he's the original writer, the artist, and like I'm glad that I get to. He lets me play those songs with him, as I am in Harlequin, And in the years that I've been with Harlequin, I mean, I'm grateful that like we did do some writing, and then we did a live album, and then recently, I mean, we still George likes to get together and creatively. Explore stuff, and he's talking about he wants to do a single again. He wants to he's thinking about something that we can write to release as a single.
Just
bands do.
1 second. You keep talking to me about this live album. I've never seen it.
There's well, you know what? It didn't. It was called On Cue. It is called On Cue. Harlequin On Cue. You'll find it on Spotify and stuff like that.
No, I'm talking about an actual CD.
Well, I mean, we made CDs of it. I don't know if they're still like hard. I think like we probably sell it as merchandise when we, on our website or when we do concerts or whatever. The day of merchandise has changed too. I mean, it's tough to sell a CD. Most people don't even have a CD player. So,
could you snag me a copy of that?
100%, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll get you a copy.
I'm a huge fan of live albums. Always have
right?
been. Oh yeah.
Awesome. And there is a song like we used to play when Nick was in the band. We used to play a song called "She's My Girl." And Nick wrote it, and he sang it, and that's on that record too.
Oh,
yeah. So that's kind of a cool thing too, that song is on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get you a copy of that for sure. I'll get that to you.
That'd be great.
Yeah. This all started from the name Junior. They call me Junior because I'm still the youngest guy in the band. But I remember when Gary came back, and I don't remember what song it is, but it was Junior. You're playing that wrong. Because he just had this like catalog in his head of how everything went in the studio. Here's how the parts are. Here's he's also, Gary Golden is also like a unique guitar player. Because in Harlequin, the keyboard player also was sort of a multi-instrumentalist. He played guitar as well. So when when I joined the band, it was MJ Hutton, who was a good piano player, a decent guitar player, and can sing. And then he was replaced by Darren Moore, who, again, decent piano player, decent guitar player, can sing. And then Gary came back, and Gary was a little more like technical. It's like he's a piano player, you know, but he's also like musically, again, like maybe it's that little thing, like he was when he got, like, I think he got to be a certain brain to become like so involved in financial stuff that you could be like financial advisor or whatever,
like a savant.
Yeah, like he took that and applied it to music as well. It's like, well, here's how it was actually played, and he'd show me how to play it, you know, or how the part really went. And he's a unique guitar player. Like, he tunes the guitar to an open A chord.
Oh.
And I've used open G tuning before, but I'd never used open A tuning. And I guess it's kind of the same thing, but a whole tone higher. It's just I'd never heard anyone do that, and he was doing it. So it was cool. And he plays slide guitar well. Like if he would probably say, I don't play guitar. But he does play guitar. He wouldn't say I don't play guitar. He'd probably say I don't really play it well. But he did it uniquely. You know, I don't see guys play like him. Plays different. But that was really cool about him coming back in the band, is that he kind of he recalls how things were done, how things were played, like in 1978 when they did the first album. He recalls a lot of that, you know. Whereas I think George just recalls, man, when we were in New York, we went to David Letterman's show and, you know, all that stuff, right? He recalls the fun.
They appeared on Letterman?
They did not appear. They were not on. Well, they appeared in the audience, right? In fact, I forget who it was. They used to have like a character, and he was in the audience, and he was actually sitting right beside George. And then the camera points to the, you know, it was one of these guys, you know. I can't even remember the guys on David Letterman's show.
Chris Elliott?
Maybe it was him. I can't remember, but it was one of those characters, right?
Okay.
And he was sitting there with George. But they never actually, you know, appeared on the show. No. That would be, you know, that would be top rung to appear on that show. I used to love watching Dave just for the musical artists, musical guests.
Yeah.
Yeah. George had great stories about recording at the record plant in New York, which is, you know, a pinnacle for a lot of bands to be able to record at the record plant.
Oh, definitely.
And to be, I guess, you know, all sort of like done in conjunction with the record companies, you know, the record company you're signed with, they got Jack Douglas to produce it. And I mean, Jack Douglas's resume was huge. He was at the time like doing Aerosmith, Cheap Trick, you know, at the time probably the biggest bands in the world. And now he's doing a Harlequin record, right? And I think, you know, like it was I know it was around that time that he ended up doing the John Lennon Double Fantasy album. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than the Beatles, right?
Oh, really?
So Jack Douglas did Double Fantasy, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's something for your resume.
Yeah. That's as big as it gets, right? George's story, because he's not here, I'll tell it, is that I can't remember what year Double Fantasy came out. Bad that way, 1980. Regardless, George said, like, the thing about Harlequin was they got the shitty times, right? Like it's like the record plant. It probably runs 24/7. And like between noon and 8 o'clock, Aerosmith is recording. Between 8 midnight, there's a slot there for whoever, the next biggest band in the world at the time, Grand Funk or whatever, or whoever it is. And then, between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. is Harlequin. Anyways, George said it was a late night, like a midnight kind of thing, and the phone rings. You're at the record plant. There's no one actually working at the desk. Jack Douglas is working with headphones on and, producing and getting guys to play their parts over. George is just, in the control room, phone's ringing. Picks up the phone, goes into the office, picks up the phone. Hello, record plant. And he gets hello, is Jack there? And he said he recognized the voice, like it's John Lennon.
Oh my!
Oh, I should get before that. Jack Douglas had made the guys in the band aware that after this he's going to be going on to produce something. And he said, "This is the biggest thing I've ever been offered. Like this is my dream come true kind of record." And he wouldn't tell the guys because it wasn't really, I guess, confirmed and all that. Basically, it's one of these things where you've been asked to do it, but you've got to sort of do a lot of formalities before it's like, okay, we've secured you to do this. So he's like, this is in the works, right? And they were writing names down on paper saying, is it this? And he just, I can't talk about it. Keep working. And anyways, George said he was in the, control room. The phone rings. He goes into the office and he answered, hello, the record plant. And hello, is Jack there? And he's going, I recognize that voice. He goes, who's calling? And he goes, it's John. And he goes, it's John Lennon. He knows right away it's John Lennon. Mm-hmm. He goes, he in his brain is going like a million miles a minute because every musician in the world, I shouldn't say every musician in the world, like me and all my friends and everyone I know, like revere the Beatles as top rung. Mm-hmm. Like they wrote 300 songs and most of them are great. And some, like 100 of them are masterpieces. Anyways, George's mind is going a million miles a minute. Who's calling? It's John. Oh shit! What am I going to say? John who? Just tell him it's John. Okay. So that was George's brush with the Beatles.
Oh,
and of course,
wow.
We all know what happened to John shortly after that album.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff, eh? That close to the best in the world.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a life that I'm sort of still on the peripheral of it, I love when I first started playing Harlequin. I was a little bit like, we'd go to wherever, we'd go to Alberta, play a string of dates, us in Chilliwack. And oh, cool! I love Chilliwack. And then you hear them warming up in the green room, singing those harmonies to "My Girl," and I'm going, "Holy shit! Does that sound good?" And then you go into your set, and then you hear them come on, and you hear four men in a rock and roll band, and you just get chills. You go, holy shit, here we are playing shows with Chilliwack. That just felt like oh, I've reached where I wanted to get.
I've arrived.
Yeah, this is it. This is what I wanted to do. So, and all kinds of guys like that, like like playing with Prism and talking to Al Harlow and him telling me about the time that he met Jimi Hendrix, which I mean, Al's a hell of a guy. He's a character. I love him. I won't tell his story because it's a little crazy. He'd have to tell it. I don't even quite understand how he burst into Jimi Hendrix's green room. Anyways, I can't even remember the whole story. But yeah, these guys, playing with these guys, playing shows with them, you're there. Um, you know, you're in the same gig as them, and these are the guys that like I'll never forget hearing Chilliwack on the radio. They were one of my favorite bands. Around the time of that album with My Girl on it, it's like.
Did you say they were or they weren't?
They were, yeah.
They were.
Oh, I loved them. Yeah, I love Chilliwack. Yeah, and now like here we are, and Bill is such a again, it's so many of these guys. It's like when you first meet me, you think, is he going to be a dick? Is he a rock star? And it's like, no, man, they're so down to earth. They're so. I think that's the thing about Canadian music in particular is love it or hate it. Some people sort of condemn that whole CanCon ruling, like sort of government mandated, forced our media to play like 30% Canadian content.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like some of the radio stations, really embraced it. And then others would like play 30% plus 0.1 and like, okay, let's get back to the UK stuff or the American stuff or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can argue that Canadian music was forced down our throats, but there is so much great Canadian rock and roll that I don't know if we would have heard otherwise,
Yeah.
Chilliwack being one of them for sure. Like we can go on forever. Everything down to the Queen City Kids and, like Chris Gaffney stuff, Orphan, the Pumps, I don't know if we'd have heard of the Headpins without CanCon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we would have heard. There's so much stuff that it's obvious. Well, I think the Guess Who was pre-CanCon.
Yeah.
But that's such great music. Again, like all of it is really. No one had to ever say, well, unfortunately, like, no, we got to spin this Triumph song. It's like, no, man, Triumph is awesome. It gets spun because it's awesome. Kim Mitchell stuff, we can go on and on. There's a ton of Canadian bands that I don't know if we'd have heard if not for CanCon. And then you hear people say, I hear it all the time when we're out playing shows. Oh man, I can't figure out why you guys weren't bigger. Because we were within the confines of our border. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
We're a Canadian band. And I mean, there's so many, I mean, I love our country, but there's so many things that you could say is a drag about being a Canadian rock and roll band. We've got a small, sparse population, right? I mean, geographically, we're massive. I think we're the second largest landmass country in the world with now we're up to what, 37, 38 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, there's that many people in California, right?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if you could just travel that little strip of land and hit all the markets, or Texas, you can go down to Texas and probably play every night and just stay in Texas. Same with the Eastern Seaboard. Like not just New York, but all that strip, right? Like, New Jersey, Philadelphia, all those places. You could probably just stay within 100 miles and, play a gig every night. And, you don't have to travel. You've got, 40 million people right there, right around you, whereas in Canada, it's like, man, there's not 40 million people across this entire land, right? So first of all, you've got to, to go gold in Canada, you had to sell 100,000 records. To go gold in the US, you had to sell 1 million records.
Has Harlequin gone gold?
Oh yeah. And of course, I'm not a part of those records, right? I was not on those early records. Yeah. Oh yeah, they've got platinum records for sure. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I did not know that.
Sorry, 50,000 was gold, 100,000 was platinum.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe that's what it was. It even escapes me right now. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that wouldn't be hard to find out.
But the thing is, with Canadian bands, Canadian rock and roll, whatever the genre, doesn't matter. I went to radio broadcast college
Right.
in mid 90s, 95, I believe, and got the CRTC handbook, which is like this thick, and saw this section which you were speaking about, where certain percentage of music has to be Canadian content. Okay. When I'm out driving around, usually I listen to, what is it, 99.9? Is that?
In Winnipeg?
Yeah.
99.9. I don't know what it is now, but it would have been like one of those name stations. It was Bob in Winnipeg.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be Bob FM. And
it's not right now, but it escapes me what it is now. But either way,
I don't hear a whole lot of Canadian content on the radio. I really don't.
I think it's still mandated.
Oh, I'm sure it is, but
for example, I know that when it was Bob, or like even still, I haven't really noted lately, but they would put, like, Harlequin was on rotation.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
What, Innocence?
Yeah, Innocence, Thinking of You. The best. I shouldn't really say it, I guess, but it's an opinion. Whatever. To me, the best was Howard Manshine.
Oh yeah.
Like lifelong 92 City FM guy in Winnipeg.
I definitely want to get him on my show.
Yeah.
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 I'd love to get access to his Rolodex.
I've talked to him about it. He's probably forgotten more about music than I've even learned. And he's told me, I buy books and I read the book and I put it on the shelf, and I buy another book and I read it, and I do that over and over. And if I don't have a new book to read, I start reading the old ones that I read before.
Yeah.
He's just obsessed.
Yeah.
With music, and he's passionate. Like, when he says the best ever, he means it. He means, like, this is the best ever. And how can everything be the best ever?
And he's
saying it. He means it at the time. This is the best ever. You know what I mean?
He's got such a great voice too.
Yeah, yeah.
Great set of pipes.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely distinguished, and it's unmistakable when you hear him speak. Oh, that's Howard Manshine.
Did you ever hear the story about him? The reason he got fired from, I can't remember if it was 92 or 97, back in 1980.
I recall, yeah. Who was he with?
The station?
Yeah, but I think it was 92, and he was let go.
Do you know why?
What artist was with him? He was interviewing an artist.
No, he wasn't.
Oh.
He was on the air doing his regular show, and I believe it was early evening, so around 7 o'clock. And in those days, news was delivered what we used to call rip and read. It would come out on this teletype machine. Whenever news would happen, they would aggregate some stories, and then they would send it out over the wires. Kind of like a fax machine, in a way, an old dot matrix printer.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that he had put on a long song, went to the bathroom, stopped by the ticker machine, ripped it off, didn't look at it, went back into the booth, and did an outro for the song. And the news was John Lennon shot dead at the age of however old he was, I can't remember.
Like 40.
Was he 40?
Something like that.
Okay, in New York. And Manshine, being a massive Beatles fan, he was literally reading for the first time his copy on the air, and his words were, "Holy fuck, they killed John Lennon." This went out over the air.
Yeah.
CRTC found out about it.
I think you get a pass on that one.
Nope.
You know.
They had to fire
I know
him.
CRTC, yeah, but to me, yeah, the world stops for a second when John Lennon is assassinated.
Yeah, but I didn't hear the broadcast. I've heard a recording of it, but
oh yeah,
I think that was just ridiculous because Howard is he's such a talent, and he's such a wealth of information. He's like an encyclopedia.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've got him as a friend on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'd love to have him on, and actually, what I'd be looking forward to more than having him on would be the pre-show telephone interview.
Yeah.
I want to know about his style of interviews, of how he interviews. I want to know how to improve.
Yeah.
How to do it the way he does it,
Yeah.
So Howard, if you're listening, man, you're one of my idols.
Yeah. He is. I mean, he is. We know him in Winnipeg as he's the guy. Yeah. He's the voice. Since we were kids,
Yep.
And it's still going on today.
Yep.
I'll never forget. Being on the road and driving back into like say coming from the west, and you finally reach Manitoba, reach Brandon. A lot of times you're driving all night in these with these bands, right? And reaching the sort of the area that you can start to get. It's almost like here we are home.
Yeah.
I remember like driving. It's Sunday morning now. You're probably driving overnight, and you're in the range now, and you get that Sunday morning resurrection.
Yeah.
That he used to do, and it's like here we are.
Yeah.
I can, I'm almost home. We're gonna make it home for the next hour. I can listen to Howard Manshine.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. He's an influence. And I think a lot of it is just, again, it's like your appreciation for music is first. And he definitely has that. He's more passionate than anybody I know when it comes to listening to music. Like he loves music.
He actually gave me one hell of a compliment. I was DJing, for those of you that are regular listeners to the show, you know that I was a professional DJ for 25 years. I was DJing at the Windsor Park Inn at a club called the Stardust Saloon, which is the old Night Moves. I think, was it Night Moves or Diamond Club?
It was Night Moves.
Night Moves, right? Yeah.
Like we're talking Windsor Park.
Yeah. Yeah, Night Moves.
Yeah, it was Night Moves.
Okay, Night Moves. And
80s, early 90s.
We had Dr. Hook come in for a concert. And I walked in. They wanted me in an hour early because they were anticipating a huge crowd, a lot of ticket sales. So they wanted me to DJ because they were expecting people wanting to dance leading up to the show. And I walk in and I see, before I walk in, I see this great big, and it looks like the old style TV antennas that you had on your roof. You know, the big bar with the things on it. Okay.
Yeah.
Pointing in the direction of 92. And I walk in, sure enough, there's Howard set up at the back of the room. He's got his headphones on, sitting in front of taking up a table, sitting in front of all of his electronics, his mixer, he's got a laptop, all that. So the manager met me and he said, you should probably introduce yourself to Howard because you guys are going to be kind of working sort of together on this. Right. So I did, and we chatted for a bit, and I told him that I was a fan since like high school, and how much I admired him, and I said, I think you've got the best voice in Winnipeg anyway, Winnipeg radio market. And he was like, oh man, that means so much to me. But he meant that statement. He wasn't a phony. You know what I mean?
No, he's not going to say it if he doesn't mean it.
And that was just before I entered in radio broadcast college.
Right.
And so I went to my booth and I went on playing music, announcing drink specials, announcing Dr. Hook coming up in however long. And was it me? Yeah, I was the one that got to announce them, to introduce them.
Yeah.
And so I did, and they started. And so I'm watching, and then somebody taps me on the arm, and I turn, and it's Howard. And I said, hey, Howard, how's it going? Can hardly hear each other because they're playing so fucking loud, eh?
Yeah.
And he said, you paid me one hell of a nice compliment. He said, I've been listening to you and listening to your voice. Everybody sounds different over the microphone when they talk. What you're hearing now out of me is the result of 30 years of smoking cigarettes. I don't have the pipes that I used to. But he paid me a compliment. He said, I think you got a future in radio. He said, you got a hell of a good voice. Your timing is right. You've got charisma on the mic. And we exchanged phone numbers. And I was just blown away because he was like one of my heroes, eh?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just, I just wanted to say that because that was a fond memory that...
You should try to get him on. I'd listen to that for sure.
You think so?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you should try to get him on. He, I bet you he'd be willing. I don't know. I can't speak for him, but he's a super genuine, down-to-earth guy. You know, even if you ask him for an hour or something.
Yeah.
I know he loves talking about music. You know, I've always said I thought that he could be a guy who could have a national syndicated show. You know, kind of like Andy Frost had one.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, he's unique, and he knows his shit, and he is passionate, and he's top rung for sure.
The thing that I don't like about Howard, and this is, listen, hear me out before you jump to any conclusions. I'm not going to say anything untoward about Howard, but the thing that I don't like is the way the radio industry excuse me, the way the radio industry has treated Howard after that incident in 1980 with the holy fuck that killed John Lennon.
Right.
Because he couldn't find work.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess, unfortunate. CRTC probably says policy is policy. And but I mean, for me, that's a forgivable one. They did just kill John Lennon.
Yeah.
So yeah, I say that one, do better next time, and we'll let this one slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Yeah, I could never hold that against them. Yeah, I don't know. I love listening to him too.
But getting back to Harlequin, for those that don't know, could you go through the lineup? Who's all in the band? I mean, the names, what they play, right, and whether or not they are, because there's only one original member left, right?
Two.
There's two?
Two are in the band, yeah.
Okay, so run down the list for me.
So right now, myself on guitar, AJ Shabadon playing drums, who I've played with. I think he's been in the band for a long time now too. Like, before we get in that, so myself, AJ Shabadon playing drums, Chris Gaffney on bass, Gary Golden, the original keyboard player, plays some guitar too, and George Belanger, the original singer, who has never left and always only done Harlequin. That's been his thing for a long time, from record one, from note one to current. So that's the current lineup.
Is George, is he the founding member?
Yes.
The founding member, or there's more than one?
Well, I don't know exactly how it went down. I wasn't there, but I think probably the founding member would have been, I think it would have been Ralph James, who is a business guy, very good business guy. And I think he may have done the assembling of players. And I when you say the original members, I think it would be like the 5 guys who were on the first record.
Yeah.
That's what you would call the original members.
Yeah.
Was there someone like before Glenn Willows? There was. But, it's kind of like, okay, now we've got the 5 guys that we are going to now go forward and make, writing, recording, touring. That would be, so the original members would be George Belanger, Gary Golden, Ralph James on bass, Dave Budzak playing drums, and Glenn Willows playing guitar, who I replaced. Those would be what you call the 5 original members.
Okay.
So the 2 left are George and Gary. I mean, again, like I've gone through the Burt Gaffney story. It's an awesome addition. Sort of their contemporaries too. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a little younger than George and Gary, but sort of like the next generation of music right after Harlequin. And then AJ, a longtime industry drummer, and myself playing guitar. And how long has AJ been in the band? Like, I know before I played in Harlequin, AJ did a couple of sub gigs. Like, the original drummer, I think he was the first. I don't know if he was the first or second guy to actually say, okay, I'm leaving the band. And he got into production stuff, lighting, staging, stuff like that. And I mean, there's a big market. I think he does stuff internationally. He's done really well. Um, and when I joined the band, it was sort of like almost like a rotation of drummers. Um, like the drummer was Rob Waite when I joined the band. And then Rob, I mean, I think he probably replaced Dave. So uh, when he'd been in the band for a while, and he started a family, he had a young daughter, and he said, like, I don't want to tour. I don't want to. He was doing, he'd do most of the gigs, and then like Stephen Broadhurst would play drums, and I know Stephen Broadhurst had played in the band before me as well. Um, Here's the thing: when AJ finally joined the band, said, "I'll take this gig and call me from now on, and I'll be your drummer." We were going to Regina, and we were going through this rotation of drummers. Like, again, Rob was the guy. I played with Steve on drums. I played with Kevin Radomski on drums. I played with Dale and Hermiston on drums. And I mean, these are all great drummers, but we don't have a guy who's like taking every gig. And Rob was like number one. He was the drummer, but I think he was wanting to switch stuff up. And then there was just a rotation of guys. And I still remember when this was probably sometime around, I don't know, 2007 or something like that. So, I mean, AJ's been in the band for like 15 years as well, right?
Wow.
And played in the band before that. But we're driving out to Regina, and we had left. I don't want to. I'm not throwing, like, when it comes to when it comes to Canadian rock and roll, it's like if you're a freelance musician, you got to take a lot of gigs. You got to take, like, even now I'm playing in Harlequin, but I have for the last few years I have been the first call for Doc Walker, and I try to make that a priority. Like, I try to say, okay, I'll take every gig, but however, there was a couple of gigs last summer that I couldn't do. It was double booked with Harlequin, and even in November I was on tour with Doc Walker, and I had to sub out a Harlequin gig. It happens, right? But we were driving out to Regina, and we didn't have a drummer. I think it was supposed to be Stephen Broadhurst drumming, and I mean, he's one of the busiest guys in the industry. And he got a gig that he had to do. Maybe it was a tour or something, and he bailed on the gig. I hate to say bailed because I get it. You have to do what you have to do. But it's like, George, you got to find a different drummer, and it's okay. We'll figure it out. And we're driving out to Regina without a drummer. We've got, the four of us in a 15-passenger van. What are we gonna do about a drummer? And George said, I've got to figure it out. He said, there's a guy, and I know who the guy is because he would come to every gig we played, like in the Regina, Saskatoon, Melfort, like that area, anywhere in Saskatchewan that's sort of in this radius. This guy would show up, and he's a huge Harlequin fan, and he would always bring like a snare head and get Rob to sign it, and he was just a huge Harlequin fan, and he's a drummer. His name was Kim, and if he's listens to this, I hope this doesn't sound like derogatory thing, because I don't blame him for this. But
Did you say Tim?
Kim.
Kim?
I believe. Like, I don't know what the spelling, but yeah, Kim.
Okay.
And he he said, I mean, I'll step in. And George said, well, he's going to step in. He's going to do the gig. It's like, George, I've never heard this guy play drums. And George says, he's a huge fan. He knows all the tunes. I said, yeah, but I've never heard the guy play drums. Have you? Well, no, but I mean, he knows the tunes. It's like, I don't feel very confident about that. And we're driving out to Regina, and like, this is when like Nick had a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone, and George had a cell phone. It's like, he's talking to the guy, and it's like, he's so nervous that he's throwing up. He says he can't do the gig.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, and now we really don't have a drummer. And I'm pretty sure we were playing Casino Regina, which is a good room, big room, and it's sold out. So what are we going to do? And it's like, AJ's played it before. Why don't we call AJ? And he calls AJ, and AJ's also a registered massage therapist.
Yeah.
And he's working right now. It's a Friday afternoon. And George's wife, George's wife, like I think AJ said, George's wife ended up phoning me at the clinic saying, you need to call George right now. Call this. So he calls him and heard George talking, AJ, we need you in Regina, like in like 4 hours. There's a plane that leaves in 2 hours. You got to get to the airport and you got to get on this plane. So he's just like, and AJ's he's a pretty anxious guy to begin with. There's no time, so he's freaking out. And he did it. He hopped on the plane and he came to Regina. And that's, I think, the last time we played without AJ. I shouldn't say the last time, because there's always something that comes up, right? You can't do every gig all the time. In fact, about a year and a half ago, we did a gig, a Harlequin gig, and Steve Broadhurst played drums. Because AJ, who's an avid hunter, it was like in November, so it was like full on deer hunting season, and he's got places that he goes, but they were, I guess it was, I don't know I shouldn't tell the story because he would tell it exactly, but I think it was like dusk, so you're putting your guns away, you're not going to be shooting anymore. And I think the land that they were on was owned by a guy that they got permission to hunt on it, but it was an abandoned farm. So they're just walking on the land and he didn't see it. It's kind of dark out and he falls into the well. And like he broke ribs, like injured his shoulder. He figured out later, I think he broke one of his cervical spines. And he, this was just like maybe 2 weeks before the gig.
Oh, man.
And he sat down at the drums and he said, I cannot play the drums. So that would be the last time AJ didn't play with the band. But like I say, since I'm going to say it was maybe around 2007, 2008, somewhere around there, we called AJ to do that gig in Regina. He showed up and did the gig and did every gig since then. So he's the drummer.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a good one. When he got the call to come to Regina, because we were going to Regina without a drummer. That's nerve-wracking, to be on the road traveling to your next gig and no drummer.
I've known
Spinal Tap,
Yeah, I've known AJ since I want to say 1987.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was DJing at a club on Pembina Highway, right next door to Q94 FM. It was a country club, and at that time it was known as Dumas Walkers.
Right. Yeah.
And Ray St. Germain Jr., who was also a friend of mine, he was trying to break free from always playing just with his dad. He wanted to do something on his own. So he put together a band, and they called themselves the 2-Day Cowboys because they would only play Friday, Saturday nights.
Right.
And somebody in the band knew AJ. I can't remember who, but
right.
Somebody did. And they brought him in. And so here, AJ's fairly tall.
Yes.
This is when he had really long blonde hair.
Yeah.
Chiseled features. The girls are all gaga over him.
Yeah.
He walks in and setting up his drums, getting ready to do sound check and all this. And so I went up to introduce myself to him. I told him I was a drummer as well. And I said, if at any point, because I didn't know him, I didn't know how experienced he was, and I also didn't know how much of Ray's set he knew.
Right.
So I said, if you need a break, or if there's something that you don't know that they want to play, just give me a signal, and I'll jump up and I'll fill in for you for a few songs. And ever since then, we just hit it off. They would come and they'd play the Dumas Walker Club, and if it was a Saturday night, the bar would close at 2. We would order a 60 ounce of Canadian Club from the owner, split it 3 ways, go to a party afterwards, and just get shit faced. And
AJ's such a good dude, man.
he is.
He does love life that way, we would get in the back of the 15 passenger. He'd pull out the bottle of homemade wine. The dairy shot, he'd have it almost like a roast, rare, cut up. It's almost like we got a little charcuterie going on in the back of the 15 passenger here,
Okay, yeah.
He just loves it, that kind of thing, He'll still want to, it's moderate now compared to the 80s, right? But yeah, the rider will have a drink, cheers, it's almost ceremonial the way we do it, But yeah, I know, he's such a good guy, and he's fun to do that kind of stuff with, He's a good dude.
I don't know if he still does this or not, and I hope if he's watching, I hope he doesn't get pissed off that I'm going to say this about him. But AJ has this habit when he's playing, especially when he's on his ride cymbal. Okay, not when he's on his hi-hat. It's only when he's on his ride. Okay, so he's on his ride on his right hand. He's got the snare on the left. He kind of crouches down.
Yeah.
And his head tilts up, and he stares at the ceiling.
Right.
When he plays.
Yeah, that's an AJ pose.
Is he still doing that?
I picture that. Yeah, I see him doing that in my head as he plays, and the other thing he does is when he hits the snare, he goes, "Muh." Like when he's playing by like just the drums, I can hear him, fill, land the fill, you don't hear it when we're playing, obviously. You don't hear it in the music, but yeah, you can hear he does this when he hits the snare.
Does Harlequin have a website?
Yes. What is it? Harlequintheband.com.
I don't think
it's well maintained. I think we get someone out in Vancouver to do it, and I think it's someone from our agency that does it.
Do you want me to put that up on the screen?
You can, but here's the thing about our website. Like right now, I think there's like 4 dates on it. Like we've got more than that booked. It's just not very well maintained. Once in a while, George puts a blog up there. He just sends it to the guy. I feel like, George is the leader of this band, and it's sort of like we do this around his, his, like everything that happens is prompted by George, and he's just not a tech guy. He doesn't really care about website. He doesn't do any social media, and that's almost like, it's a good thing that he comes from the 80s and we're at that like legacy band kind of thing, because if you were a new band, you're not doing anything if you're not doing social media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's harlequintheband.com, and I couldn't even tell you what's on it right now. Because someone actually told me recently, you guys are playing, they told me a couple dates that we got, and I go, yeah, we got those. And I said, I think we got about, 10 or a dozen dates or whatever. And they said, well, there's only 3 on your website. And it's like, well, I know there's more than that. The guy who does it, I think anyways, he works with our agent and does a bunch of the classic rock bands.
Okay, I just put it up.
Okay.
Harlequintheband.com.
Harlequintheband.com. I'm sure that's it. Yeah. It used to be on my picks. I don't know anymore. It's not on my picks, but I'm sure it's harlequintheband.com. I'm not very good either. Social media and that stuff. I know how to just post a You know, um,
Facebook.
yeah, post like promote a show or whatever. But these days you got a new product, you got to know how to. Uh, I mean, I don't get it. TikTok is the thing.
I don't get it either. I don't find it. I haven't found anything on there that's so hilarious. I've got some friends that'll send me a clip of this, that, or the other, and it's like, oh, you gotta try it. You gotta try it. Give it a chance. So you have you gone to TikTok?
I have a TikTok because I know that people say you're going to need a TikTok. I haven't
Okay.
done much. I haven't released any music myself. I've got a bunch of songs that I've been working on, and I'm thinking of contributing them to another project. But regardless, I mean, I know they say you're going to need a TikTok to promote this stuff, and what I've been told is this. I
That's
mean,
bullshit.
what I've been told is what you want to do is if you've got a song that you believe is a hit or it's got a real hook or whatever, you do a video, but you're only going to do like say like the last line leading into the chorus and the chorus once. It's going to be like 15 seconds long,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
video's got to be something really catchy.
Yeah.
And then so you do that, but you have like other videos ready to go.
If you ever need somebody to produce, or edit video for you, let me know.
Okay, I'll talk to you about that. But what this is just what I hear people saying, and then you have like a dance to that song, and then you have like something that has nothing to do with the song, a nature thing or something. It's just other themes to this song, and eventually you're hoping that people are going to just get the algorithm for the song, and they'll just know the song.
Hmm.
They'll just go, oh, that song, oh, that song, I know that song. I don't know. I don't understand it myself. I mean, there's more to it than that, but um, I don't understand TikTok either. 15 seconds or whatever it is, 30 seconds.
Well, you're getting the exact same thing as you are on Facebook with what they call shorts.
Right. Yeah,
Those
yeah,
little
yeah,
shorts that they put out.
yeah,
Most
yeah.
of them
I know
are
what you mean.
most of them are just stupid.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is uh, kind of mindless bullshit. In fact, I was just talking about this tonight with at family dinner. It was like I was saying, like we're to, my nephew says, son, I hear them talking about China interfering with Canadian elections or something. I'm like, and he says it seems like such a far fetched, it's bullshit. And it's like I don't think like they're like directly got their fingers in our politics. But here's something to think about. Like, and I'm not just saying this. Like, I heard someone, I can't remember who I heard say it, but might have been on a Rogan podcast or something. Like, someone smart saying, TikTok, I know that you're basically going to be fed or you're going to see things algorithmically what you've seen in the past.
Hmm.
I haven't spent much time on TikTok. I know that there's a couple things that I've watched, and I notice that if I ever turn on TikTok, I get those couple things over and over.
That's
Like there was
because
one.
when you sign up for TikTok, did you go through the process where they want you to select different areas of interest?
I did, and all I really checked off was music.
Okay, so it's very vague, so you're probably getting a little bit of everything.
Well, there was this woman who plays a harp. I get a lot of her.
Mm.
Um, I get a lot of like I don't know how to say it. I don't want to say chicks, but they're young girls, probably 20 years old, like doing you know, they're wearing a house coat and then boom, they're wearing a bikini.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not. I'm gonna hand to God, I don't sit there watching it, but I probably watched a few of them. I've watched this thing, and there's this indigenous guy, a couple of indigenous guys actually that I can think of that I've watched, and I get those are kind of the three. If I ever turn on TikTok, which I don't think I've turned it on for, like I don't think I've hit that app for like 6 months. Those are the things that pop up on
Hmm.
my TikTok. Um, but yeah, from what I understood is, it's a Chinese, like TikTok is a Chinese um, invented or social media platform, and the TikTok that we get is not the TikTok that Chinese people use. Like we get like there's not a lot of substance. I mean, I hear people say, "Oh, I can watch TikTok. I'll start watching, and then 2 hours later, I'll say, shit, I'm still watching TikTok." Like these 30-second videos. It's like, how do you watch that stuff over and over?
Mm.
And it's sort of like the dumbed down shit. It's like I don't know. I mean, I haven't really seen anything of substance.
Me neither. You're not alone.
And then, but from what I've understood, is the TikTok that we get is not the TikTok that they get. They get like long form educational things that we don't get, and it's almost like an information technology warfare. It's like we're meddling in your ability to think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. I can't explain what I'm sort of thinking, how they interfere with us, but I don't like it anyways. That's my feeling. But somehow I feel like I'm going to be forced to embrace it.
Yeah. Um. So what's happening in terms of upcoming dates?
Well, dates are coming in for the summer. Um, I know Harlequin's next Winnipeg play isn't until November.
November.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't even think it's announced yet. It wouldn't have been announced yet, but that's what's on our books. I'm probably not supposed to announce things before they're actually announced, but we have a date confirmed in Winnipeg in November.
Okay.
And it is, well, maybe I'm not supposed to. It's us in Prism at the event center in Winnipeg. But we got a decent summer shaping up. There's still classic rock festivals around the country, which is awesome. Out in Vancouver, on the plays, some Saskatchewan stuff. Right now, the only Manitoba play is that one in November, but I have a strong feeling something else will come up in Manitoba, probably even another Winnipeg play. And then I don't think there's anything east of us except for the East Coast. We're out on the East Coast again this summer.
Mm.
And I love going to the East Coast. I think from what I understand, we have Cape Breton, or not Cape, somewhere Halifax and maybe a Newfoundland or something like that.
Mm.
Some East Coast stuff. I do love the East Coast. We were in Newfoundland last summer as well. It's a colorful area of the country. I don't know if have you ever been to Newfoundland?
No, I haven't.
I mean, it feels like a different country. That's what it feels like to me.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that I wasn't really very well traveled until I started touring with bands. And now I feel like I have seen every square inch of the country through a van window or through a bus window or through a, whatever, from the airplane or whatever.
Mm.
Like I've played in every province, especially from here west. Like I look at a map and I try to find places that I haven't been. I mean, we haven't played them all, but I look at a map and it's like people say, whatever, like there's a place in Alberta called Rimbey. Oh, I played Rimbey. What? You've played Rimbey? Yeah, I played Rimbey. Or there's a place just north of Red Deer called Lacombe. Oh, I've been in Lacombe. Why would you be in Lacombe? I've Esterhazy, Saskatchewan, you name it, like places where you're going, what? Where the hell is that? Like, I've been everywhere. That's the song. I've been everywhere, man.
Yeah.
It's a huge country, and you look at the map and you go, shit, man, I've been a lot of places in this country. Um, and from time to time, people say like, "What's your favorite place in the country?" And they think that this is a politically correct answer, and it's really not. I say every place has its charm. Like, I mean, we're from the prairies. When people make a joke about Manitoba or Winnipeg, I'm like, oh, I love it here. It's awesome. It's like, what? The winter's so cold and there's so many mosquitoes. Like, dude, I can think of times that I've been in Edmonton where I was being eaten alive. Like, why would you say that it's any worse here than it is there? I lived in Toronto for like 7 years. I'm not going to say anything bad about Toronto, but I don't want to live there. If I still want to live there, I'd live there. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the
Mm-hmm.
one thing I haven't done is lived in another country. I haven't I haven't explored too much outside Canada. Like I've done some work in the U.S. and I've been in I don't know how many different states I've been in, but like I've been in California, I've been in Arizona, Colorado, the Eastern Seaboard, New York. I've been all over that place.
How much of
Um,
a market is there in the States for Harlequin?
Unfortunately, there isn't. And again, it's that whole Canadian rock and roll thing. We were confined by the border. We've been, some of the Harlequin shows that I've done in the States are like border areas. Like there are places like in Michigan where they're like, oh man, we used to love to get, the station across the lake and listen, to what you guys are listening to. Like they know some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I played a handful of dates in the States. I mean, I played with other bands in the States. Like I have played in. Uh, Anyways, we don't have a lot of exposure in the. There was really just that. There was you play in Wisconsin because they heard it. They just proximity. They would hear the radio and pick up some of the, what are the Canadians listening to.
Okay, so why is there no exposure? Is that the fault of the promoter?
I guess it's a record company thing. It's like there was Sony Music and there was then the Canadian division, and it's like we're marketing this Canadian band in Canada. Um, I think every once in a while you might be offered a tour with an American band, or I know Triumph did a lot of work in the U.S. I think Harlequin might have did a few dates, like if I'm not mistaken, like down in St. Louis and stuff like that. Funny enough, it got more reception in South America than it did in the USA.
South America, really?
Yeah, of course, before I was in the band, but yeah, Colombia and Brazil and places like that, and like big shows. Like I've seen video and pictures of here's where we played, and it was like a soccer stadium with like 20,000 people and many bands, but they're on this serious concert thing out there. And still we get like little like pokes from people, hey, you guys are still working, like you guys should come back to Bogota or whatever. And it's like I've poked George with it the odd time, but he doesn't want to go back.
I don't think you've answered my question, Derek.
What was the question?
What's the reason
I
for
guess it's promotion. Like we just were never promoted in the US.
why?
That would be a question I wouldn't know the answer to. I really think it's just again record company um, strategies where it's like we're going to market this Canadian band to this Canadian market, and that's as far as it went.
I discovered a band, um, and as it turns out, they're not new. I thought they were new because I'd never seen hide nor hair of them before, and never heard anything from them before. Uh, Took.
Oh yeah, Took.
They are incredible.
They are incredible.
And for whatever reason, I was under the assumption that they were a Canadian band.
You would assume that because they're playing only Canadian music,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
And
they're
seeing them wearing Blue Bomber jerseys.
they're. I mean, I know those guys in particular, I mean, I'm a friend of Brent Fitz, who plays bass in that band, who is also like just an accomplished musician. I think his first instrument would be piano.
How well do you
And,
know him?
well enough that I can call him up.
Do you think you might be able to get in touch with them to see if they might be interested in doing a podcast?
I can always ask Brent. I can always talk to him.
If
he's a busy guy.
If not
if
Brent,
he can't, he would just say, I just can't right now. Like, he just doesn't have the. I don't know what his situation is right now, but I can always talk to him. And, if he's receptive, I could ask him if I could get you guys in contact with each other.
If not Brent, then definitely Todd.
Well, I mean, I don't know Todd well.
Being the front man would be the obvious choice.
They all have a really interesting perspective. Like, here's the thing about Brent. Like I say, his first instrument is piano.
Mm-hmm.
In Took, he's the bass player.
Yeah.
When I've played with him, he's played drums.
Mm.
He's a phenomenal drummer. He's a musician, So it's just a funny thing. And so he also plays with Slash, obviously from Guns N' Roses, Slash, Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators.
Mm-hmm.
He plays drums in that band. So he's good enough, not just good enough. He's a phenomenal drummer. He plays drums in that band. And then he plays bass in Took. And you can tell he's a great bass player. And then, like I say, I think the instrument that he learned music on is the piano. The only time I've played with him, he's played drums.
Ever since I discovered them, I've been listening to them a lot, and their first album, which I believe is called Giver.
Yeah.
It's all cover tunes.
Yeah.
Which I've come to understand, which is mostly what they do is cover tunes, right?
Mostly what they do, they have written as well, and they do now. They have released original material, and it's good. Like Todd Kern, I don't know if people know Age of Electric.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
With his band.
Yes.
So, I mean, again, you'd have to be a 90s person to say, oh, yeah, I remember that band. What was I going to say? I can't even remember how I got onto that. Brent Fitz, again, a Winnipeg guy. All of them Canadians. That's the thing, too, right? Corey Churko, Saskatchewan guy.
Yep.
I believe Moose Jaw. And the drummer, his name escapes me. I don't know him at all, but I believe he's an Alberta guy.
Well, and, Todd is American, isn't he?
No, Canadian.
Is he he's from Saskatchewan.
Where's Todd from? I always thought he was a West Coast guy. I always thought he was a Vancouver guy. I don't know where he comes from.
He's living in Vegas right now. I know that.
They live in Vegas. And I mean, I remember when Brent left Winnipeg, and he was going south, and I think he went to LA first, but they landed in Vegas. And I'm not sure what landed them in Vegas. But that's home base to those guys, Nevada. And I mean, we all know it's a small enough world. Like, like if you lived in Vegas, you can be in LA in an hour if you hopped on a plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where Slash is based out of right now, but whatever, they all sort of landed gigs, like big gigs. Like I know that Todd also plays in Slash's band.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Churko has been with Shania Twain for a long time.
Yep.
So, top rung Canadian act, but also an international act who we all know she has had a residency in Vegas. She played like every night in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
That's not where he got the gig though. I mean, he's played with her for a long time. So yeah, these are top rung guys who are from Canada. And the first time that I recall playing I don't even know if they wouldn't have been called Took at the time. we were doing a fundraiser. Harlequin played, and then Brent Fitz came up and Todd Kern came, and they brought Corey Churko. So those three guys, they're I can't remember who played drums, and they brought Lenita Erickson up, another like Winnipeg born who went south and played, had a stint with Vixen, I believe. So we did this fundraiser, and Kenny Shields showed up, and so Todd, Brent, and Corey played. Actually, I think Brent would have played drums on that, and I think Spatch played bass. But anyways, Kenny Shields came and sang some Street Heart songs. And then, of course, they didn't play any Harlequin songs. We played as well. Lenita came up and did a few songs. Paul McNair went and sang a few songs with him. Todd Kern sang a few songs. And it was, I just noticed, this is all Canadian content stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably where the beginnings of and the genesis of, let's do a Canadian classic rock tribute thing. Like, let's pay tribute to Canadian rock. There's so much good stuff. And that's what they do. And I mean, for several years, I mean, this isn't a new thing. They've been doing this for a long time. For several years, it was all covers, and then they recorded cover songs. And I mean, they did a really good job. Like, Todd's just, what a singer. He's a great singer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, Took, they're awesome.
If you can mention to them,
Yeah.
I'd like to have, in particular, I'd like to have Todd on the show.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I think my point was, like, if Brent said, "Hey, I'll do it," I would take it, because Brent's a super interesting guy, super articulate. Obviously multi-instrumentalist. He's done a ton of gigs with some. He's played with Gene Simmons. First time I was on tour with him, he was in the band. Like, we were opening up for his band. He'd have been with, I guess he was with Theory of a Dead Man.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of them good guys, and if I'm sure if they're able to, I'll talk to Brent. I'll send him a text.
Sure, that'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So, we touched on this briefly about, I think you said George was the one that was tossing around the idea of doing some new material.
Yeah. He asked me recently, like, actually, I even in a like text from last week, and I'd like to work on a song. Of course, it's tough right now because he's in holiday mode. He's in his Mexico mode right now, so I don't have I don't like I'm still a fan of getting together in the same room if we're gonna collaborate on something. Or I guess if I sent him an idea and said, "Here's an idea," and he could start singing with it and stuff like that. But I don't like a virtual. I've done some collaborating with people on songwriting where it's like we're doing it like you and I right now, and it's a tough thing to throw ideas back and forth musically like this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can't play together. I believe that if I start playing, there's enough latency between you and I that you're not going to hear, or you can't hear what I'm doing while you're speaking. I can't hear what you're doing while I'm playing, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't like. I know there is some programs. I can't think of the name off the top of my head, where they have it's meant for sort of rehearsing bands virtually, and then y'all have to have this sort of same interface kind of thing. Anyways, right now we just can't do it. We can't collaborate right now. But he talks about it. He wants to do a Harlequin single. I'd love to do it. I'd love to work on something with him.
You'll have to forgive me for this next one because I'm not totally up to speed with everything that Harlequin has recorded. But you guys, I'm sure you must have at some point recorded a cover song, or no?
No.
Never,
No.
really.
No. No. They've never recorded like Harlequin has never recorded a cover song. There would be, well, yeah, no, they've never have they recorded a cover song. All original material. In fact, I know when we did our live on cue CD, when stuff gets sent out for reproduction, I guess you wouldn't think so, but somebody listens to your music and says you're going to need, like, hey, like if we did, let's say we did a cover, like in a Harlequin show, like I guess right now we do a version of don't let me down.
Oh yeah.
Right. So we do that
Yeah.
Beatles song, right? In the encore, we do a version of Get By With a Little Help From My Friends. Again, another Beatles song, but we do the Joe Cocker version, really. We do that thing, right? Now, on our live recording, we purposely omitted those. And the reason being, you have to pay.
Oh yeah.
To use those.
Yeah.
So we said, let's not include those. Now, here's the kicker. George does not own his own publishing. So we had to pay to re-release Harlequin material when we released the live album.
Really?
Yeah. And don't get me started on how pissed off George was when we found that out. Even so much that when we play Superstitious Feeling, you're familiar with that, right?
Yep.
Superstitious feeling running all around in my head. Superstitious feeling. Right, we do that whole thing at the end. Right? And then I go, and we just land on. And we kind of do like 4 bars of a Zeppelin song, like not the whole song. Just someone had listened to the whole CD and said, "You're also going to have to pay to use that Led Zeppelin song." And we're like, "We didn't record any Led Zeppelin songs." Well, you got like 4 bars of Heartbreaker at the end of Superstitious Feeling, and you have to pay. So we had to pay to do that too. You know what I mean? But that's
how much did you have to pay for 4 bars?
You know what? It's based on how many reproductions you do. I think it's per unit produced, and I don't know what it was. But I know we weren't just able to release the material without sort of legally paying the dues that need to be paid.
Yeah.
I know that George has contacted the record company to see if he can own his own publishing. And I don't know if he was phoning him to see if he could buy his own publishing back or what it was. But I know that like when he did that, and I probably talked to him the day or two later, he was like had smoke coming out of his ears. He was so pissed off because you phone up, I guess, Sony or CBS Records, and this is George Lyon, Harlequin or whatever. I'd like to get a meeting to discuss buying my publishing back, and just hold on a second. Then someone else comes on the line, and we're looking at the files, and you still owe something like, you still owe $250,000 to the record company, something like
What?
that. So once you pay that off, we can talk about how much you want to buy, how much we want to, how much, you would, we would charge you to buy your publishing back. Anyways, yeah, he was pissed off as hell.
250 large.
It's probably all bullshit. Bands really did get, and I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh man, they signed up for it," like they signed. But I get it, man. You're like, you're when you're chasing this dream. You're a 20-year-old kid in the late 70s, and you're on the verge of signing a deal. Like back then, signing was like, if you can sign, there was no like promoting yourself through the internet or anything like that. You can't go viral. It's like you need a record company to record you, to promote you, to get you on the radio, all that stuff. So you kind of like throw everything away if we can sign this deal. Like, yeah, let's sign this deal. And it's like, well, I should get a lawyer to read this before I sign it. Oh, here's your lawyer right here, and it's a good deal, man. Sign the deal. So you just signed, right? And you didn't know exactly what you were signing up for, but you signed basically, certain amount of records, and you sort of agreed. He explained what this means, and maybe didn't sound as dire as it actually is. You don't own these songs that you're writing, but yeah, that's how that went for a lot of bands. And to an extent where there's some bands. Have you ever heard of the band? Well, yeah, you would know Badfinger.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know Badfinger?
Yep.
I mean, they had a manager. I forget his first name, Paulie. They were in such a shitty deal that they didn't even own the name of the band.
Jeez.
And they got so screwed at some point. They said, we're going to leave the company, and we're just gonna tour for now. And they said, well, you're not even allowed to play a show under that name. I mean, they were basically had nothing. They were getting screwed for money. You look at how many records they sold and what the guys were making, and it's like something's not adding up here. And they just got screwed on every end, right? And I mean, you can sort of say, hey man, you signed on for this, but it's really taking advantage of people, I think, who were really just chasing a dream and would do anything. And then to find out that you're not even able to play a show under the name that you started this band with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two of the members of that band committed suicide.
Oh,
only
God.
4 members in the band. And of course, right, I'd be really interested to, I know that there's only one guy left playing what's called Badfinger. I don't know if they still play or not, but I know that Harlequin did a show with them. I don't even know which guy it was, the bass player, I think. I can't remember his name. So Harlequin did one show with what was being sold as like, it was a version of Badfinger. And just being able to talk to the guy about what went down, what happened, and the destitute feeling that they had, at some point in their career. That was so bad that, literally half the band killed themselves. It's a tragedy, the story. But yeah, it's you hear of guys, like Paul McCartney didn't own his own songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Michael Jackson bought them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guys, lots of lots of artists do not own their material. Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting talking to guys. That's one of the things I've enjoyed the most about playing in Harlequin is, like you mentioned Dr. Hook. Like I still remember the first time playing with them. And anytime since then, I love talking to Ray. In fact, the first time I met him, I walked into a room and there he was, and I went, "Hey Ray, hey Sugar, tell him who we are." And he just laughed, and he said, "You're too young to know what you're even talking about." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, I spent hours and hours in the back of the car with my dad blasting the Dr. Hook record. And he goes, you mean your grandpa?" And I said, "Oh, Ray, I grew up listening to you."
Yeah.
Plus, maybe he didn't know I'm maybe a little older than he thought, But yeah, I mean,
I had a chance to work with them.
Yeah, you were mentioning, yeah.
They, I'll never forget. This is just a short story, but at the Windsor Park Inn, in their contract, they had a rider for booze.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And the manager, who was also a good friend of mine, because prior to working at the Stardust, we both came from the Golden Nugget Saloon, which was on Main and Redwood, which went bankrupt.
Right.
So George got a job at the Stardust. 2 weeks later, he gives me a call, gives me a job as a DJ.
Right.
So about maybe 6 months in, I see the announcement that Dr. Hook is coming. So, as I said with the Howard Manshine story, I came in early. Anyway, the place is still filling. It's not quite up to capacity. And I see two of our bouncers come to the, you know how in that club there's 3 steps going down to the dance floor?
Yep.
Okay. They're dragging a wagon. One bouncer picks up the front end of the wagon. The other one picks up the back end. They bring it down, put it onto the dance floor. At this stage, it's just out of the corner of my eye because I'm busy queuing up a song.
Yeah.
And as I'm queuing it up, I'm kind of doing this.
A wagon full of booze.
I'm talking like 4 feet long by 3 feet wide. 3 cases, 3 2-4s of beer, Corona, and the rest 26 ounces of you name it and mix.
I'm familiar with that. I mean, like, the first time I played with Dr. Hook, it was an outdoor venue, one of these classic rock festival things, and there was like we each had our own, like, it would be like a trailer was your green room, and then right behind the stage there was like a common green room, which is like where you go before you go on stage, and then when you come off, you sort of like go into the common green room, take your jacket off, towel off, that kind of thing. Well, we had just finished and we were in the common green room, and then Ray is on after us, or the Dr. Hook is on, and Ray comes into the tent, and he had like a guy with him. I guess like a kind of like a handler, like a, just one of his guys, right? And he comes up to us, he goes, "Guys, Ray wants you to leave." So why does he want us to leave? Like, it's the common green room, like, and it turns like, this is, I guess, I don't know. I don't know what year it was, but I mean, it was before legalization of weed. But well, it turns out he wants to smoke a joint. And it's like, well, he's not going to offend anybody in this room. You know what I mean? I mean, we're all been rock and roll players for the last 20, 30 years. We're not, but he just, they used to be called, Dr. Hook and the Traveling Medical Show. I mean, drugs and alcohol were a way of life, right? that's the first time I met Ray. Or not, that wasn't the first time I met him, because the night before in the hotel is when I came up to him and went, "Hey Ray, hey sugar." I started doing that with him. But that, their rider was extensive. There was another time I remember playing. It was in Cape Breton with Dr. Hook, and after that show, we were going to Halifax, and they were going back to the States. And but we were on the same plane. Ours landed in Halifax. He caught a connecting flight, because not many planes from Cape Breton went where, I don't know where they were going, somewhere in the U.S. But so we're on the same plane to Halifax, and it's not a long flight. But I was reading the Marilyn Manson biography at the time, and you're reading the Marilyn Manson biography, and there's this part in there, like Marilyn Manson. I mean, I'm not a huge fan.
No.
But I'm interested in what makes him want to do what he does. Like, I guess he's trying to be edgy, whatever, right? And I mean, like out of line behaviors would happen, and I mean, crazy drug use in that band too. And they were talking in this one little section of the book, they're talking about addiction. And I'm not an addict. I just like to use drugs, and then he starts saying, well, you're an addict if, and there were all these things, all these lists of things that, you're an addict if. And then I remember at the bottom of the page, you're an addict if you know all the words to a Dr. Hook song, or have ever played in Dr. Hook's band. Because they were also sort of known as like two guys who had a sort of rotating bunch of musicians. And it was just the Dr. Hook traveling medical show, And I'm reading this, and across the aisle from me is Ray. And Ray, he wore the patch on his eye.
Yeah.
Like, that was not, that was not a put on. It was not a prop. It was.
Oh, he lost his eye. I know.
Yeah. And he was also like really, like he'd wear thick glasses for the other eye. And then when he read, he put another pair of glasses over that. So, we're traveling the plane, and I'm reading this. I'm going, you're an addict if you know all the songs to all the words to a Dr. Hook song, or have ever played in Dr. Hook's band. So he's sitting right there, and I nudge him, and he's like, looks over at me. I give him the book, and I said, read this. And he's like one row in front of me. I'm in this aisle. He's like, I'm here. He's here. So I just kind of see him, his head and shoulders, and he does this. He pulls his glasses down, pulls the other pair of glasses down, and I see this. And then I see, like, you'd have to see it from this angle. I see this. he just thought that was awesome, in Marilyn Manson's book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, their alcohol rider was extensive. A lot of bands are. There was a point in Harlequin where it was too extensive, in my opinion. And I mean, now, like, I mean, we're down to George, Gary. They're, you just can't keep doing it, right? I mean, but we'll still pour a drink, have a cheers, have a couple before the show, almost like, again, ceremonial,
Mm-hmm.
and then after the show, have a couple cool down beverages, libations with, some of the other acts that we played with, or whatever. It's just fun to do that. But there isn't the consumption that it used to be. In fact, we keep scaling our rider back at this point. I mean, at one point, since I've been in Harlequin, at one point, and I can tell how everything came on. It was a bottle of tequila, a bottle of rum, a 40 tequila, 40 of rum, 40 of vodka. How many beer? I think it might have been a certain amount of domestic beer and a certain amount of whatever. A bottle of red wine, a bottle of white wine, and then that grew to 2 bottles of red wine and a bottle of white wine. It was excessive. It was too much. I mean, we'd go on the road with like 6 guys. Who's going to drink all that? And if you got several nights in a row, who's like, what are we doing? Are we just accumulating alcohol here?
Mm.
And unfortunately, that contributed to some of the problems that, like, it contributed to. I'm sure it was no help for Nick's situation. when you know, we'd have too much booze around. And now I think it's like I told George, like I'm the guy who liked the rum. Well, Nick loved the rum too, but the rum is basically there because I like rum. And I mean, I'm gonna have like one or two before the show and one or two after. That's it. So now if a 40 shows up and I've had like, let's say I've had 4 drinks, the bottle's not empty. The bottle's not half empty. You know, it's like, here's all this. What do you do? And we're traveling, right? I'm not going to start accumulating bottles of booze. I'm just not going to do it. So it's left there open. And I guess if it's a bar, they can just put it on the shelf and serve it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
A bottle of wine, it gets dumped out, right? You know, oftentimes it's like I'm the guy who likes red wine. If I'm not going to drink the rum, I'm going to have, well, more lately it's the white wine, but the second bottle of red wine was added because I joined the band and I wanted red wine, and George used to like to take the wine home. So, so I think we're down now to a bottle of red, a bottle of white, and I think we might only get like a 2.6 or even a Mickey or rum, and sort of the same size of a bottle of vodka, and that's about it. And the beers, beer and wine, maybe you know, combined 40 ounces of alcohol, and that's it.
Mm.
Because that's all it needs to be, really. You know, we don't need to go. We don't need to go crazy.
Well, there's also a difference too because we're talking about musicians that have already had their party days.
Yeah.
You know, they're seasoned musicians. They've done all that. They've seen all that, and I'm sure that they've seen the results of
We've seen the toll
excess.
it can take. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You know, I hate talking about Nick because I feel like I'm talking about him. You know what I mean? It's not good to talk about. Like there were so many becoming things about the guy too. Like I don't mean to the only thing I've talked about Nick was like the problem that he had. But he was a smart guy. He was a talented guy too. And he was hilarious. Like he was a great guy to hang with. He was funny as hell. He came with so many one-liners that we still use today.
Mm.
Yeah. So I hate talking about him. Like I say, so far all I've mentioned is, you know, the bad shit, the problem that he had. But there's so many good things about the guy. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, right, that he's hilarious. He would give you the shirt off his back. You know, he was such a talented finishing carpenter. He was so many things. Great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just need to add that because, like I say, I don't want to just say, you know, he was a bass player in the band who had a problem.
Yeah.
He was way more than that. Yeah. Yeah.
So, where do you see yourself 5 years from now, Derek?
You know, I've asked George, how long are you going to do this? I wrestle with what you know, where I am now and what I'm going to do. I've been talking to a couple of guys, talented guys who have had success in the music business about doing something new. It's so formative right now that I can't even really say who or what it would be. But you know, all we've had one meeting and have really just discussed about, you know, direction of the music and stuff like that. We haven't written a note or anything like that. We all have stuff that we've written individually, but we would maybe see what would happen collaboratively.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to think that could happen. I would love to pursue that. in the it's really three of us right now that have sort of thrown this together as a possibility, which would be fun. Would Harlequin, where would they be in 5 years? Like I said, I asked George, how long are you going to do this? And he said to me, well, Junior, I'm gonna do this until they start throwing tomatoes,
Mm.
which I think is an interesting answer.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't think you should run your legacy into the ground. You know what I mean? I don't think you should do this until nobody wants to hear or see you again.
Yeah.
I think a good way to do it would, kind of like an athlete. Like, well, first of all, an athlete, when you're done, you're not gonna play a game or have a bout or whatever, uh, you know, uh, any longer than you're able to, right? With musicians, it's like, well, as long as I don't know, like right now, we'll play some shows where there's, like last time we played Winnipeg, there was a sold out event center, which was, I think it holds about 12 or 13,000 people, or 1,300 people. We'll keep doing that. We can do that. You can, if you've got that many people willing to pay for a ticket and go see your show, you can do that. But if that dwindles down to half that, promoters might be going, well, we can't reconcile this gig. So then you lower your venue, right? And that might lower the people who want to go to that venue. And then you find out you're playing for a couple hundred. And are you going to do this until you got like 100 or 50 people left going to your show? And maybe you're not making enough money and you can't pay your guys and you got like B players with you. Like, I don't know what, I don't know where it's going to go. Like, he's talked to me about when he retires, you know, when I retire from this, you guys can keep it going. You can keep the legacy going. You replace me. And I'm like, well, does this keep going without George? Like, he's been the only guy who has been in the band from note one to now. And I don't know how much longer Gary wants to do it. So would people go and see a band called Harlequin with not one original Harlequin member, much less the original singer?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. There are other bands that I play with that I think have signs of more longevity. Like, for example, Doc Walker, like Chris and Dave, the two guys that are Doc Walker,
Yeah.
they're younger than me. So, you would sort of surmise that they would be something that I could do with more longevity, as far as being in a band, that tours and plays shows that I like to play. Do I want to do, if not that, would I want to do like what I did this weekend? Would I want to be in a cover band? It was fun. It's because, both those bands that I played with on the weekend, they're it's loosey goosey. I get to sing a few. I get to play a few of my favorite songs. I'll play and sing "Purple Rain." You like SRV on Friday night? I did Cold Shot. I sang and played that one.
Yep.
On the next night, I did a Hendrix tune. So I mean, it's fun to play these songs, right? Do I want to do that? Try to make a living doing that again? Right. That's how I started, really. Move back to Winnipeg and start a cover band back up. And we know that back then you could play in the club several nights a week. Do I want to go back to doing that? There are no several nights a week. There's weekends and that's it. And the clubs, they're not paying more now than they were then.
Yeah.
Like 25 years ago, you're getting $100 a night, maybe $150 a night, but you're playing 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
You can, and inflation was like way low, like cost of living was way lower then than it is now. Inflation has made it so that if you're making that, you're not really living, right? Back then it was like, this is a livable, no one's getting rich here. No one's making a ton of money, but we can live on this. We can, when I moved back to Winnipeg, I bought a house. I mean, it was a shitty little place, but I bought it, right? I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 5 years. I'd like to think I'll never quit playing, and I do. In the last little while, I have written some material that I've recorded, and I have a lot more that I'd like to record. And at the very least, I'd like to record them and find an outlet that I can put them on Apple Music, Spotify, all those things. Make a couple of videos, do the social media push that I would have to do to maybe get a little bit of exposure and do that at the very least. Um, some of those songs, and I guess that's still that's still up in the air. Am I going to be doing it collaboratively with other people or by myself? I don't know. Um, am I going to be doing Harlequin? Would I do it when George is gone? I don't know. You know, it's part of the thing about when I chose to do music. I really didn't know what I was getting into, and I still don't know where it's going to go. I really don't.
Well, what what was the dream for you ultimately? The big dream.
I wrote it down, and we talked about this in the pre-interview thing. I wrote it down when I was a kid. I want to be a rock star. Like, I actually, like in grade 6, I had to write a project. What are my, I think it was 6 or 7. I can't remember. I know it was junior high school. Write down, what you'd like to do, and what you think you have to do to be, and of course people are writing down what 12-year-olds write down. I want to be a hockey player. I want to be, a lot of people were a little more realistic,
Mm.
um, and I wrote down I want to be a rock star. I want to get in a bus and travel to the next gig and play in front of thousands of people, and get back in a bus and travel to the next gig and play in front of thousands of people.
Mm.
And I've done that. I can say I've done that. And like I said before, I'm not a rock star. I'm just a guy who was lucky enough to, have supportive parents that put a guitar in his hand and fostered his idea of a dream, and that much has happened.
Are you recognized on the street, Derek?
From time to time. From time to time, yeah. I mean, I can think of, like, for example, well, even this weekend, I was at the bar or the casino there, South Beach, and there was a couple tables there. The one woman in particular was just amazed that I was there playing
Mm.
in this band, and then she saw Stephen Broadhurst, and she was even more amazed that Stephen Broadhurst was there. Like, he plays, again, like I mentioned him before. He was playing in Harlequin before I joined Harlequin, and then left shortly. Well, he's like, again, he's a freelance guy. If we went through the bands that he's played with, he's more recognized in the country scene now. Like, he was in Doc Walker when I started playing with him a couple of years ago. He's kind of on hiatus with them right now, but he plays in Emerson Drive. He plays with Jason McCoy. He, like, the Roadhammers. He plays with the Roadhammers. He plays with Charlie Major. Like, he's the first call for these bands. Like, he's, the top drummer around,
Mm.
a high profile guy. So yeah, I get the old, hey, you're from Harlequin, all the time. Even in we tour in the summertime, and I played a place in BC last summer called Canal Flats, and I'd never been to Canal Flats. And what it is, it's a place about 40 kilometers from Radium, BC. And when you're on tour, you don't get to do a lot other than play music. It's like you get to where you're going to go. Usually you go to a hotel. We're going to check in here. We're going to get our driver room or whatever. We're going to get set up, and then we're going to go to the venue at 2:00. So you don't really have much time to do anything. Go to the venue at 2:00. Of course, they're behind. We're not going to be sound checking now till 4. So you got a couple hours to kill at the venue. You do your sound check. It's now 6:00. Okay, doors, guys, we've got to wrap this up. You go back to the hotel. You have something to eat. We're on at 9:00. We go back to the venue. We play. You know, you do that, you do your stuff at the venue, you do your meet and greets or whatever, then you head back to your hotel and you wake up the next morning and travel usually. So you don't, you know, you're in all these beautiful places and you don't get to do much. And it's sort of one of my regrets is that like I've seen every inch of the country but haven't really done much, you know.
Mm.
I shouldn't say that because I've gotten to do some pretty cool things too. In Canal Flats, I started the morning. We actually arrived the night before the morning of the show. I woke up early. I was sick as a dog, and I went for a little hike up a mountain. And I was alone. It was about 7 in the morning, and it was just it just felt like this is awesome. Like this is I want to be here with my family. So I went back with the family in September,
Ah.
and we took a drive to Radium. I just love the mountains. I've always been drawn to the mountains. It's again, they'll you know when people say what's the best place in Canada, well, you know, it's all beautiful. The whole country is beautiful. I am drawn to the mountains, and we went to Radium, and we were in the hot springs in Radium, and I that show in Canal Flats, which is 40 kilometers from Radium, was with Doc Walker, and there's two guys in the Radium hot spring. We're in the big hot spring, big hot pool, right? And two guys are biker guys. He points at me, hey, you know, I overhear him talking, and they're talking about music, and we kind of make eye contact. Doc Walker, but they also remembered because when Chris and Doc Walker introduces me, he introduces me as Derrick Gottfried. You might have seen him before in Harlequin, and then you know, country and classic rocker, kind of like this.
Mm.
And they said Harlequin, Doc Walker, Harlequin, you know. So yeah, even you know, very unassuming places by unassuming people. It's like yeah, they'll once in a while I get called out or recognized. You know, I'm no Paul McCartney by any means, but yeah, I can walk down the street for sure. But every once in a while, you know, I'll get the yeah, I know you, I know who you are. You know.
So have you been asked for your autograph yet?
Yes, yeah. In fact, again, like even the I don't know what her name was. Even the lady on the weekend asked me for my autograph. And I said, you know what? If you live in or around the Winnipeg area, you can just come and see me play so many times because I'm doing this kind of thing throughout the year in different situations. You don't need, I said to her, you don't need my autograph. And I don't mean to turn her down. It's just, you know, let's say, I mean, she didn't know I was going to be there, but if she'd have pulled out a Harlequin CD or something and said, would you sign this? I would do it. But like, it just feels silly to like, what, sign a napkin and give it to her or what? You know what I mean?
Mm.
I don't know. And I don't carry, you know, 5x8s, you know. So funny enough, there was a shout out to Don Windsor when I posted the link for tonight's podcast on Instagram. You have to put a picture, so I used a picture that he took, and he actually showed up that night with a 5x8 that he had pictures he had taken. I've got a few around here. He's a phenomenal photographer,
Mm.
and I've got a few others here that he's taken. But yeah, I was about to give that up to her. But yeah, every once in a while, yeah, I'll get recognized or can I get your autograph or whatever. A lot of times, people say, do you have a guitar pick? And I just give them a guitar pick. I usually have guitar picks on me. At shows, like I'll sometimes like throw picks out or whatever. And whenever they say, can you sign it? I say, no, I can't sign a guitar pick. In fact, that's why your autograph's on it, right? That's why you sign a pick. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it says Harlequin, but my name's underneath it, signed. You can't sign a pick because for years it's like if I gave picks before I had, you know, my own pick or whatever, they'd say, "Can you sign it?" It's like you take a Sharpie, you'd be like,
Oh.
"You
Yeah.
can't do it." No, I can't
Yeah.
do this. I can't do it. So, anyways, but yeah, I mean, of course, when I joined Harlequin, people would always come with records and stuff and say, "Can you sign it?" And of course, I was apprehensive, you know, because especially if they brought a record. I am not on this record. I didn't write any of this record. I don't play on this record. They almost 95 or 99% of the time say, sign it. I just watched you play in Harlequin. Sign the record. so I sign it. Um, of course, the ones that I'm on, I sign. I have no apprehension signing. We have some, uh, pictures as far as merchandise. If they buy, there's actually in our merchandise, there's like a retro picture of the old band, and then there's current picture of, let's take a current promo picture, glossy black and white. They asked me to sign, I sign it. They asked me to sign the old picture, and I said, so who do you think I am in this picture? That's what I say before I sign it. And if they're ever looking at me, and I get it immediately insulted because I'm standing beside George, and I go like, do I look like an original member to you? And then I mean, none of us are getting any younger, but I just don't think I look as old as George or Gary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't say that. I think George and Gary do really well, regardless of their age. I think they're in great shape, and they don't move like Gary's 70 this year. George is 73. They don't move around the stage or act like they're that age. They still do really well. But yeah, I mean, that's my experience with recognition or any of that stuff. I always appreciate if people acknowledge that they recognize me or have appreciated what I've done. I never, like I say, I don't really refuse people if they ask. That felt a little silly on Friday night because what was I going to sign? And and I just told her, if you're in the area, you can come see me play in a situation. But anytime anyone expresses any appreciation for what I do, I just got to reciprocate it with I appreciate that because I'm only doing this if people are interested in what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
If no one's interested in what I'm doing, I don't need to do it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Except for my own indulgence, which I've wrestled with too. Like, why do I do this? Why do I do this? Like, I love doing it, but is it just self-fulfillment, or is this contributing to, are people getting anything out of this? More recently, I felt like, am I contributing anything, especially since working at the school, that situation I was thrust into, having to, well, again, I didn't really have to find a job. The government made it so that I could have probably lived for 2.5, 3 years on subsidy, but I just didn't want to do it. So I started working at the school, and it really did feel like now I'm contributing. In fact, I think when I first started at the school, I was making less money working than I would have been if I had just taken what was called the pandemic relief emergency fund or whatever.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, it just felt like I should be doing more than just playing my guitar, and even now sometimes, like when I was asked to resign from doing that job last year, about halfway through the year. Like I basically started doing it in at the end of 2020. So I didn't even start at the beginning of the school year. I started at the end of 2020, and I did that year, and it was great. I just thought, this is great. And then I did have some gigs that summer, but it wasn't what I would call busy. It was definitely busy enough. And in fact, a position came up for what's called EA, Education Assistant. And they asked me if I would come back. Their first question was, are you busy? And I said, I've been super busy this summer. It's been a busy summer. And they went, well, that's probably the answer to our next question. I said, well, what's your next question? Well, an EA position has come up. We'd like you to apply on it. So I said, well, I know what's coming because we all knew that we were not finished with this. In fact, that, they were still wearing masks in the school and shit like that. So I said, I know that, venues, they were still only doing like 50% capacities and stuff. The summer when it's outdoors, it was easy. You could sell an outdoor show. When we go back into the club rooms, theaters, stuff like that, it's going to be limited capacities. So I said, I'll apply on the job. And they hired me, and I started doing the year, I guess 2021, 22. Yeah. And, come the end of that year, we were getting back into full swing. And I think it was sort of like there was a week that the principal at that school, he's also a musician. He liked having me in the building. I think I like I say, I still got 100 hours there that I'm about maybe a third the way through. And he told me just put in for a leave without pay, and I'll approve it every time when you got to go on the road or whatever. And about the third or fourth time that I did that, I think I was gone for 4 or 5 days or something. The head of HR sent me an email that said, please resign. So, I resigned and I did music full time again. And I've been doing it full time ever since. It's tough for me to walk away from that. I really enjoyed it. Like, I got to be honest with you, the educators in this country don't get paid enough. And I'm not an educator. I was actually hired as education assistant. And even at that, I wasn't even really doing that. Like, and I told the principal, like, I'm not a good AA. Like, I'm not. If they said, hey, these two kids over here are having trouble with two-step algebra, can you take them to the to the learning assistant room? There's it's called the LAR. I wasn't there when we were going to school, but can you take them to the LAR and help them, at least try to understand this and get them, and I'd be walking to the LAR going, holy shit, I don't know what two-step algebra is. So I'd sit down with these guys. Okay, guys, let's figure out how to do this. And I'd pull up the Google, and I'd try to understand it before I show it to them. So let's learn this together, What I felt what I felt I could do is I could connect with kids. I felt comfortable sitting with, like, guys who are maybe not necessarily, like, maybe they're a little lost or they're just not interested in school or whatever. I felt like I could connect with kids. That's it. Yeah. It was fun. And it felt like I was contributing. That's it. I'd like to think I could just do that full time, but I got to be honest, it just wasn't paying enough. It just really doesn't. It covers the bills, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's no extras, which really is all you need, I guess. I don't know. It all started from the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And, for better or for worse, I picked this to do is for a living like 30 years ago, and I'm still doing it. And I don't know what I'm doing. I never really did know what I was doing, but I just knew I wanted to play this thing.
Any regrets, Derrick?
I don't think I can have regrets. It's not a good way to live, right? To say, oh man, I wish I would have done something different. Every once in a while, I wish I had a little more security. Self-employed musicians don't have retirement plans or anything like that. Like if you said, hey, I'm not at a retirement age yet anyways. None of my friends are retired. I shouldn't say that. My brother just retired at 55. So, that's your earliest retirement age. If you worked at a place that, was you had a pension and you could get your full pension, it was usually at 55. So he just took the first opportunity to get out of a job that he never really enjoyed, but he worked hard at and did really well. And I think was probably paid well and had a good pension. He said, I can live off my pension. It doesn't mean you're not going to work anymore. He could probably do something else. But it's always nice to say, I have a pension. And I know what's coming. You're going to get the government old age security and that kind of stuff. And I can live off this. I know what I'm looking at for an income for the next however long. Like, I'm probably not going to outlive this income. And I think I can live on this for the rest of my life. it's not a bad position to be in. And then if you find a job or something else that you like to do, but don't need it, and the second you're not enjoying it, you can walk away from. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I do sort of regret, or no, I shouldn't say regret. I think the short answer would be no. I got no regrets. Um, there are things I wish I could have that just don't come with being a musician, and it doesn't mean I have regrets being a musician because I do love music. And you could always be a musician. You can be something else and be a musician. Like here's a good example. I've mentioned Steve a couple of times already. During pandemic times, Steve started doing like you got to have the talent for it. He started doing construction and like come back to full-time music. He's like, you know what? I only really feel like he said he actually played with me on Friday, and he said I don't have a lot of gigs coming up. What are the gigs that he has coming up? Like some Roadhammer gigs in Australia. I can't remember all of them, but they were like, that would be a good gig. That would be a good gig. He's like, yeah, I love doing the construction thing, and I'm only taking the gigs that I love. You know, that'd be a great position to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do what you love to do, and when it's not what you love to do, stop doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my fear is I don't really have many abilities in other areas, and I don't know what I would do if I wasn't doing this. So yeah, it's a tough one to reconcile. Like, yeah, I'm not going to live with any regrets. That's just how I feel.
So then you are living the dream.
This is the dream. Yeah, living the dream, man. It's true. Yeah. The dream was to be, I wrote it down when I was in grade 7, and I'm still doing it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you're lucky for it.
I'm lucky. Yeah. And I don't take that for granted. Yeah. I don't let a day go by that I say, I'm grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For the things I get. I know that, everything down to, man, like we are the privileged ones, like we got homes, we got food, we got all those basics that we know that there's a huge percentage of populations that don't. Plus, born into a family with 2 supportive parents who encouraged me to do what I wanted to do the whole time. And, sometimes, sometimes I think I could have done better. I know I could have done worse, yeah, I could have done a lot worse. That's it. I'm playing music for a living. It's not my own music that I ended up playing. I still want to do some of the songs that I've written. Like I've got some, and I've recorded some of them. I'd like to do, I'm going to release that material at some point.
Make sure you do.
I will. Yeah. And I have recorded some of it. And I think, as things pan out, I'm going to be doing more of it. I know it will. I know I will. In fact, I've been in touch with a producer and other musicians to work on it. The only reason it's on hold right now is to see if I'm going to be contributing it to another project. But I will do it. I'm bound and determined to do that. Yeah, and I appreciate that encouragement, man.
Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Yeah.
Well, would you believe we've done 3
I'm looking at the
hours,
clock.
23 minutes, plus the first 20 minutes, so that's like about 4 hours we've done.
That's crazy. Yeah, I can't believe we've spoken that long. Let's go to bed. I don't know if anyone's stuck it out this long with us.
How you feeling?
I'm pretty tired, but it has been a stressful weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's been nice, man. It's been nice catching up too, like really, I mean, like you say, we've known each other for a long time, and we haven't spoken this much in 30 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's good, man.
So we call it a night.
Let's call it a night. Yeah.
And we say goodnight to our viewers. Tune in next week. Next week is a surprise. Don't know who it's going to be. I'm not going to tell you. Not just yet, anyway. So,
Well, make sure you promote it enough, because I want to check it out too.
okay, I will. Well, I guaranteed I'll do that.
Maybe you'll leak it out to me after we're done signing off.
Yeah, just hang tight there, Derek.
Okay.
Okay, folks. Thanks for tuning in. I know you've been seeing it scrolling across the screen the entire time, but don't forget, subscribe, like, share, comment. It's all appreciated. Much love. This is Dr. Talk saying good night, folks.
Cheers.